All right, we will now call the City Council special meeting to order for January the 10th. Please rise for the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Father, we ask that you would bless this day, Lord. Lord, we ask that you would give us wisdom. Father, we ask that you would bless each and every one of these applicants, Lord. Lord, give them clarity of mind, Father, that they can convey exactly what they're about, what they intend to do, Lord, and give us the best answers they can, Father. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. May be seated. Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Councilmember McGuire?
Here.
Councilmember McCurr?
Yes, here. Sorry.
Councilmember Taylor?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Bernard?
Here.
Mayor Anderson?
Here. All right, we got a couple of house cleaning topics here. We've got two sets of questions. We've got an original set of questions and a revised set. Is there a preference from the council of which set we want to use?
I'm happy with the revised.
I'm happy with the original.
One original, one revised.
There's a couple that's on the revised that I'm okay with, but a couple that I think should stay. So I'm a little pulled on that one.
Well, let's make it simple and pick one or the other.
Then I will go with the original.
Okay, any preference?
I mean, I didn't see anything in the revised. It seems like the questions they still asked the same thing. They just were more concise.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, but on the revised, number 13 and 14 were removed, and number 27 and 28 were removed, and I kind of think those are important questions to ask also.
I agree. You said 27.
13, 14, 27, and 28.
So 27 and 28
I'll
are.
make a motion, we go ahead and stay with the original.
I second it.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion?
You said original, Jim? Okay.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember McGuire?
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bernard?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
No. All right, second thing is tabulating the scores. We obviously have the score sheets, enough for each applicant here. Do we want to tabulate them today, or do we want to take them with us and turn them in Monday morning for tabulation by Monday night?
I prefer to turn mine in during the daytime on Monday.
Okay, we
Same.
got,
Same.
okay. All right, that affirmative, no one against, and we don't need a motion for that. Okay. All right, Ms. Koger, is there anything else before we get going?
Just with turning in the tabulations on Monday, I will need them by 9 in the morning, so I have time to turn them around for Monday night, please.
First thing Monday. Or before. Okay. Anything else? With that,
Are those in here to tabulate? Oh, I missed them.
yeah,
Sorry.
the last 7 or so sheets. All right, do we want to call in our first applicant, or is there anything before we get going?
No, that's all.
Okay. With that, looks like number 1 in line is Jordan Fairfield. Can we ask him to come in? Morning, Mr. Fairfield.
Morning, how you doing?
Doing
morning.
well? How about yourself?
As Dave
All
Ramsey
right.
would say.
Appreciate it.
Awesome.
So, Ms. Koger, I believe it'll be you that are asking all the questions. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
right? Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay.
Mayor, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I need to ask Ms. Kroger a question. If she said it, I missed it. The applicant to be.
Yes, ma'am. She withdrew. It was emailed to everybody Friday morning as soon as we knew.
I noticed.
Yep, we'll have 3 applicants today. With that, Ms. Koger, any questions for the council before you
No,
begin?
I apologize if I'm a little mumbled. I'm supposed to get a root canal next
Oh,
week,
no.
so I will do my best to enunciate for you. So I apologize in advance.
Understood.
Good so far.
Appreciate it.
Ms. Coger, do you want to go over follow-up questions and how that'll all work?
Yes, so we're going to do a 45-minute interview.
Okay.
They're going to set the clock in front of you, just
see it.
kind of to keep you focused.
Sure.
We have about, I think, 32 questions to get through.
Okay.
I'll ask the question, and then if you just give your response to council.
Okay.
And then if council has any follow-up on your answer, they can ask it at that time, but please keep in mind the time constraint too.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Do we need to get through all 32, or is it?
We-
I ask that because it obviously dictates how long my answer is.
Yeah, we're hoping to.
Okay. I will try to keep my answers short and concise then.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right, and with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So the first question is, what is your understanding of the council manager form of government, and how will you work to support, respect, and regard this form of government?
Yeah, that's a very great question to start us off. You know, council form of management is very unique as it intertwines with the city manager, right? So the city council is obviously elected to represent its constituents, and the city manager is there to carry out that role. But it doesn't mean there is not necessarily checks and balances. You folks have your own checks and balances. That's why each one of you carries the weight of a vote. It is my duty to make sure that the city is carried out with the best intentions for the citizens, but also at the direction that you guys are requesting. And it is also my position to bring all the facts and transparency to you and make a recommendation, but ultimately that decision is yours. That's why you guys are in the hot seat. And it is my role to make sure that it is carried out effectively with a smooth transition.
What is your philosophy regarding community engagement and keeping residents informed regarding critical issues related to the community, and give an example?
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to give an example that doesn't pertain to me. When I was here 2 weeks ago, there was a gentleman that spoke that said he called the city, and it was almost 2 weeks before he got a phone call back about an issue. That's 100% unacceptable. And I think the city should look into that. If somebody calls the city and has an issue, everybody that works at town hall works for the city, for the citizens. And whether that individual that has the answer is not there, somebody as a human being should recognize that person's importance and call them back and let them know, I hear your concern. Please wait for the individual to come back from vacation and they'll answer your concern. Not ghost them, if you will, for all intents and purposes, and not answer them. I say all that to say, my management style as it relates to that is strictly that. We need to treat each other with human being decency, and in doing so, I think the PR issue that the city of Avon Park has right now will ultimately change, but the citizens of Avon Park have to trust the management that is running it. And ultimately right now there is a deficiency in that.
How would you characterize your management style, and do you believe in having an open door policy for all levels of staff?
Yes, so to the later part of your question, an open door policy I think is 100% needed and required in senior level management. And when I was in the military, I had a mentor, and when I went through leadership training, they taught me that anybody can be a boss and a manager, right? Not everybody can be a leader. They're two completely different things. Anybody can tell you what to do, that's a manager. There's plenty of them, fast food industry has them, labor workers have them, but not everybody leads. A leader leads from the front and makes executive decisions from a desk. That's the difference. And a manager sits behind a desk. It is my management style not to be authoritarian. It is my management style to lead from the front, get out there and understand the issues from my department heads, and also understand the issues at the employee level. And it is also my management style to use a synergistic approach. I don't have to be the smartest person in the room. I don't have to be the subject matter expert as a city manager. That's why I have departments. That's why I have department heads. It is my role to listen to them, understand their needs, and collaborate with the seniors that are experienced to understand how we can present to you folks the goal and the final product that ultimately you will choose for the city. And ultimately, there's two things that are always driven at that management style, and that's public safety and what's best for the citizens of Avon Park.
As a leader, what is the toughest ethical dilemma you have encountered, and why is an ethical workplace a high priority, and how would you foster positive ethos within Avon Park to inspire employees and the community?
Sure. a little humor, I have a Florida education, so I'm gonna need you to repeat that question one more time. It was a little long.
Okay. All right, so as a leader, what is the toughest ethical dilemma you've encountered? And why is an ethical workplace a high priority? And how would you foster positive ethos within Avon Park to inspire employees and the community?
Sure. So I said earlier that the city of Avon Park has a public relations issue. It does. It has a PR issue. I think everybody here would be blind to not recognize that. There is a mistrust here. Part of that mistrust is convoluted in some type of questionable ethic, non-questionable ethic issues, and everything else, and it's a rabbit hole you can go down for days, weeks, months, finger pointing and everything else. The reality is ethics are at the backbone of government. If you don't have ethics and you don't have ethical standards and ethical practices, you're not running a government that works for the people. You're running a shady conspiracy that moves money around from one bottom line to the other with false gap principles. My role in my experience, when I worked for the federal government for the Department of Interior, we had an ethical issue as it related to an oil and gas pipeline. And the question was, do we carry out a contract that is or less inexpensive than a competitor, but the ethical issue is we did not circumvent the correct procurement steps because the individual who was cheaper did not want to file the procurement paperwork because it was cumbersome for the government. So now you have an ethical issue. Do I do what's cheaper for the taxpayer, but I circumvent all of these federal regulations? Or do I follow the federal regulations and ultimately cost the taxpayer more money? And the reality is, this is a very interesting gray area for ethics. And we must make the hard decision and have the hard conversation where we choose the one that follows the Sunshine State law, that follows federal guidelines, federal regulations, even though it costs more money. Ultimately, for the taxpayer, it is what allows the government and the municipality to have peace of mind that they made the appropriate steps for the citizens of that municipality.
In your view, are mid to upper management perspectives more important and valuable than their subordinates? And please explain. And then part two, how do you make room for dissenting opinions or views among your senior leadership?
Yeah, that's a great question because as I was saying earlier, there's a place for senior department heads, right? They're obviously there in that position. They've earned that right for some reason or another. But the reality is it doesn't mean that they're the subject matter expert, right? The utilities department manager maybe has 15 years of experience, but the gentleman who doesn't really want to be in management is comfortable, moving the shovel. Maybe he has 25 years of experience in ball gate valves, and he knows them like the back of his hand. Why should we not leverage that as a city? It would be irresponsible of us not to. A prime example of that is the gentleman who has been working diligently at the airport. Why not leverage his capabilities and his drive? Why would you not? It only benefits the city and the citizens. So that's the first part to your question. The second part is, the department heads, just like you folks, have to have a synergistic and teamwork environment. It is my job to make sure that happens. It's also my job to herd kittens for all intents and purposes. That's what the city manager does to some degree. We're herding kittens. But it is my job to make sure we're all the same type of cat for all intents and purposes also. And that we're all on the same page and we're all using the same litter box. The reality is, it is my job to make sure we're on the same team and we collaborate. Collaboration is the backbone of what's going to drive the strategic plan for the city. Collaborating is what's going to allow us to see different opinions and to see ultimately different options. And we should pursue each one of those options, ultimately to find out what's best for Avon Park.
What approach have you used in dealing with personnel problems, disciplining, demoting, or firing employees? Describe your experience, if any, in dealing with charges of discrimination or grievances filed against you or the city you served.
Sure. So while I've been fortunate, I have never had any grievances filed against me, any complaints, any discrimination complaints against me, and I take pride in that. Unfortunately, I have worked under a human resources investigation where we ultimately terminated an employee because of the fact that he ultimately had negligence for his job and was responsible for the third largest OSHA violation in the country. And because of that, he was ultimately terminated from the federal government. Additionally, I have worked on investigations where taxpayer money has been used and forwarded to nail salons because managers don't want to answer their phone, which is 100% unacceptable. I have worked diligently to understand and investigate not only why this happens, but how we let this happen. And each termination and demotion should be a chance to look at that. There's a reason that we're in the position that we're in. Why is it? Was it a fault of the government? Was it a fault of complacency? Was it a fault of the management to allow it? And we need to understand that so going forward, we can learn from our mistakes and make the city better.
The CRA often tackles projects that take years, involve multiple partners, and come with strong community opinions. How would you support CRA staff during those challenging periods so the work stays positive, productive, and moving forward?
Yeah, the CRA is a very interesting organization, and it's one that I think has really gained a lot of traction probably in the past 5 years, right? You know, the CRA has a line item in its budget, and it has a responsibility and a role that helps bring rebeautification to the city and promote strategic growth and infrastructure growth and helps those who are in need, right? Unfortunately, we can't write a blank check for the CRA. So there has to be a checks and balances of what we can do and appropriate those funds responsibly. The reality is, though, like you said, some of these projects are long-term. Some of them are short-term, but if we're going to paint an entire 2-block area, we need to be understanding of how long that's going to take and be also realistic of what it's going to take. The reality is we need to appropriately set that money aside and earmark it so that it is spent responsibly and we're not robbing from Peter to pay Paul, because that is very comfortably what most municipalities end up doing. And it makes for a very slippery slope at the end of the year when you're trying to balance the budget.
Redevelopment requires creative thinking, especially when budgets are tight or a project doesn't fit neatly into a traditional process. Can you share an example of how you've thought outside the box to get a complex project off the ground?
Sure, absolutely. When I worked for the Department of Interior, we were trying to redo, for all intents and purposes, the oil and gas and natural gas pipelines. But to back up a little bit here, let me give you a short background. The office I worked at, we did not have appropriated congressional funds. We were one of few offices in the United States where we make the government money. And because of that, we had a lot more leeway in what we can do with our funds. I say that to say we still fell short on a massive $100 million capital improvement project. So the question is, how do we make that money up? And this is probably one of the questions in your deck there. It comes with utility rates and taxes, right? The reality is I thought outside the box and said, why don't we change the index that the government uses? Instead of matching natural gas indexes on Wall Street, why don't we match natural gas indexes in the local Texas market, which gives the government a much higher return on investment payback for the capital improvement when we leverage it. So instead of taking the drag out from a 10-year payback, we shortened it to about 42 months. And it drastically improved the payback period for the government and made the ROI for that improvement project much more easier to swallow for senior management and congressional staff.
Tell us about your most significant work-related accomplishment. What was the accomplishment and who helped you achieve the success?
Sure. So as I said earlier, I oversaw the third largest OSHA in violation the U.S. government has ever seen, and it was on itself. And I have never in my life stepped into an OSHA abatement of that magnitude before. On day one, I was handed it, and I was told, fix this for the government. You have 1 year. While you're doing that, you need to remanage this office, 2 other offices, and you need to manage the helium reserve, 1 of 4 in the world. You need to do all of this remotely from Florida, and you have a budget of $786 million to balance. And you want to talk about overwhelmed on day one. It was a little overwhelming, but the reality is I'm a big proponent of piece by piece, step by step, you walk forward, right? The object every day when you come in the office is not to take 2 steps back. That's the object. It doesn't matter how many steps you take forward. You just need to keep moving forward. Keep your head down, put your blinders on, and keep pushing. And the reality is, slowly, over the year, you build a team that trusts you. slowly over the years, you build a team and a congressional staff that appreciates your answers, appreciates your drive, and ultimately trusts you to get the job done. And that's exactly what I did.
The Insurance Service Office, ISO, review is an evaluation process that assesses communities' public fire protection services and then assigns a public protection classification, commonly referred to as ISO rating. This rating ranges from 1 being superior to 10, no recognized protection, and it helps insurance companies determine property insurance premiums for homes and businesses. Have you ever been involved in the ISO process, and if so, at what level? And how did you assist with making the ISO rating better?
Yeah, no. So the federal government doesn't deal in ISO ratings. So that's one of the unique positions that the federal government has. It doesn't really have the need for an ISO rating. While I am familiar with it and familiar with the requirements, I have not directly dealt with it. But I would remind you that that experience is negligible. That experience is not required, because I guarantee you there is somebody in the city staff that has worked with that. And if there's not, I will work tirelessly to bring myself up to speed with subject matter experts to be comfortable, to sit at that conversational table, to have that conversation, and make sure we're making the steps to get the highest ISO rating that we can.
Fire departments in Florida face significant challenges in filling vacancies due to a combination of factors, including high retirement rates, difficulties in recruiting new talent, and retention issues. What ideas would you present to attract or entice people to apply and encourage people to stay long-term?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, public safety is always at the forefront of what we do, but like you said, the reality is it's hard for retainership. It's hard to retain an employee when they could go to the next county over and get paid significantly more money, or a different municipality. That's a hard challenge we face today. As the cost of living continues to increase, municipalities are constrained by that. But the reality is we need to start thinking outside the box. We need to look at creative ways that we can set money aside to retain more employees. And that doesn't necessarily have to come in the form of a salary. That's the one thing I would encourage you. Some individuals are just interested in being at departments that have maybe the latest and greatest equipment, stuff that also would increase ultimately our ISO value, but also would give peace of mind for the citizens of the city that maybe we have a Quint truck or we have a ladder truck that's brand new that offers foam protection, not just water protection. We have not only one tanker, but 2 tankers. We have 2 brush trucks. These are things that, and additionally on top of that, training mechanisms. You know, the more comfortable the employees are knowing that they can perform their job, the more comfortable they're going to be in their job. And when they're comfortable in their job, they're going to want to stay in their job. Now, it doesn't mean that an increase in salary isn't going to hurt, because it will. But that's a hard conversation that the council has to have about the value of it and where that bottom line sits.
Emerging trends in the fire service include advances in digital tools, increased environmental hazards, new staffing models, and a stronger focus on firefighter wellness and public outreach. How do you stay informed about trends that could benefit the fire department?
Yeah, this is one that I would lean on the fire chief for, right, and the fire executive staff. You know, public safety and public image is big. There's no reason why the individual at the fire department can't always be there to help do public outreach. That's something that literally doesn't cost us any more money, because they're paid regardless whether they're at the station or doing public outreach. So why not? Why not give the citizens and the kids in this community something that they can look forward to? That's a win no matter what. No way can you do that and have a loss, right? But the reality is you have to continue doing that year over year. The reality is you have to look at new and innovative ways, and that involves sending the staff to conferences for training to understand what other municipalities are doing. And in doing so, we will come up with creative ideas, and also it goes with synergy and collaboration with the staff, having new ideas and new public meetings that allow us to show and showcase the fire department.
Explain the negative aspects of outsourcing the city's building and permitting services.
The negative aspects? Yeah. So there's typically positive outlooks when you subcontract something out. You know, the same reason would be why you don't normally manually wash your car and you go to the car wash. It's cheaper, more convenient, and everything else, right, at the simplest level. But there are some side effects to it. And one of the biggest side effects for the city and the building department, along with planning and zoning, is you lose a little bit of that local control. right? You lose a little bit of that code enforcement, or not code enforcement, but regulation enforcement that the city can maintain. And instead, we're relying on the county and the county's subject matter experts, and we lose that from a local level. Additionally, we lose the flexibility with our infrastructure development and redevelopment as well. But these are things that these are things that can be overcome, right? We can work around them, even though we have an agreement with the county. But if the city decides to bring it back to the local level, it's very simple to mirror something that the city of Sebring does. They have a very small building department and planning department, and they still get it done. So it's not impossible for us to do. It's just a matter of, do we want to do it? And if you really want to do something, we'll find a way to do it.
Do you prefer the utilization of a code enforcement board or a special magistrate in the code enforcement process outlined in Florida Statute 162?
Yeah, this is a very interesting one, because the question ultimately comes down to, do you want an inside directive or do you want somebody who has an outside view? That's, at the simplest terms, that's what the question is. Do you want somebody who's not familiar with the area, or do you want local citizens? And I think there should be a balanced approach, but ultimately I typically fall on the idea of a special magistrate. And the reason for that is, on egregious code enforcement violations, we have to take the emotional aspect out of it. The reason we have code enforcement is not only to be reactive and proactive Karens for all intents and purposes in the community. There's actually a public safety, there's an aesthetic part of it, there's an infrastructure development part. They all play factors into it, but unfortunately most people only see the emotional aspect of it. And we need to take that out of it in order to enforce the issues and get the change corrected for the city.
Do you believe in capping code enforcement fines at a specific amount depending on the severity of the violation, or do you believe in allowing the daily fine to accrue for the 20-year period allowed by Florida statute, and why?
I'm a strong proponent of allowing that to accrue, and I will tell you why. Because some commercial businesses will lean on the cap and leverage it to their ability and not see it as a hurtful violation for all intents and purposes. It won't affect their bottom line. However, if it's accruing daily, it stings a little bit more, right? Now, I think there is a fine line there, because obviously if we have a citizen who is physically unable to fix their code violation or whatever the case is, it's not fair for them to constantly be daily fined for something as simple as that. There's a fine line here we need to walk. But I am a fan and a proponent of daily fines, because I think it's the only way you can perform a checks and balances for the commercial and industrial sector.
Question number 16, halfway.
Okay.
What is your level of knowledge, understanding of day-to-day utility operations? And if prior experience, what is the largest utility challenge as a community you faced, and how did you manage the challenge?
Sure. So I am the only applicant here, I'm very confident, that has a very unique utility background. Everybody else would be very conventional. I think we all know that based looking at the resumes. My background is in natural gas utilities, in serving tri-state citizens. So we serve Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, but in a very unique way, because I serve directly as a wholesaler to the industrial market and then ultimately to the citizens. But the concept is very identical. We have AMI metering systems. We check the flows. We do a checks and balances with the engineering department, ultimately the utility department, to ensure the regulations and the flow rates are correct. And then we balance what that rate should be. And we look at that rate and determine whether it needs to be increased based on the needs of the government, or in this case, based on the needs of the municipality, the capital improvement projects, and things like that. When you look at your budget, ultimately, I mean, you'd be under the biggest rock ever if you didn't know the utility department is your biggest revenue maker, right? So the reality is, you have to look at how you balance that. We can't just jack the prices up so that we can put a little bit more money in our pocket. That's ethically wrong. We're right back to the ethical question. But the reality is, we do have capital improvement projects that need to take place. We do have annual maintenance that needs to take place, biannual maintenance, semi-annual maintenance, and we need to make strategic plans for that so we have enough in the reserve. And sometimes it requires a hard conversation. Sometimes it requires a conversation that the public and the city council is not ready to have, but we need to sit in those hard conversations and have them for the betterment of the city.
What level of knowledge and understanding do you have of municipal planning processes as it pertains to infrastructure? And give an example of an infrastructure planning process you assisted with.
When I lived in the city of Newberry, I was directly a part of the strategic plan for the city. It was a 6-month process as we developed an overall 3, 5, 10-year strategic plan and reported it to the state. And these are things that encompassed Department of Transportation, infrastructure that was coming through, planning and zoning requirements, code enforcement limitations, everything you could possibly think of down to the width of our sidewalks for accessibility for ADA compliance. These are standards and thoughts that the city needs to take. Ultimately, everybody wants the city of Charm to come back to life, right? You know, we have, as I said, a PR issue, but the reality is it costs money. I'm not going to lie to you, we don't have open checkbooks, right? But we have to find what the citizens of Avon Park, who you serve, what they're asking for. What is a priority for them? It may not be what you think it is. The city, my staff, myself, is to report that to you during a strategic plan, to show you and outline what the citizens find important, what they're looking for, what they feel that the city needs. And then it is your job to make whatever necessary decisions need to be made so that we can carry that out.
If there was a special event that involved FDOT road closures, what would need to be brought before council in order to have it approved? And if approved, what happens as far as the city is concerned on the day of the event?
Yeah, so first off, there needs to be a collaboration with FDOT, right? We need to understand what the needs are for the city, and ultimately, we need to make sure that we are on a 90-day window so that we can make the proper necessary paperwork filed, and we can make sure that the city council is on the same page. We don't want to be 30 days and less out in trying to scramble to make a unified decision with FDOT and road closures and municipality staffing. You know, that's at the basis of just having a good conversation and planning. That's all there is to it. The paperwork is insignificant. It's the planning that takes part that's needed. And that's at the forefront of just being a good leader and good manager and having good planning.
Describe any experiences you may have had in developing and recommending policies to the council related to growth. For example, annexation, expansion of utilities, subdivision standards, and so on.
Yeah, so I have worked with infrastructure growth with the federal government level. I have worked with annexation that the government does in land swaps with the state at local levels. The reality is everybody wants growth, right? Nobody typically wants what comes with the growth, right? But everybody wants some type of infrastructure or industrial growth. It brings in revenue, brings in jobs, it brings in all of that stuff. But the reality is we have to have hard conversations. We have to look and see, can we afford the utility growth? Can we do a builder promissory note where the builder infrastructure is going to pay and offset those fees? Can we do some type of tax discount to bring in businesses that promote job growth at the standard pay rate? You know, these are all unique things that the city of Newberry has offered, and more importantly than that, the town of Estero. And I would encourage you that the city of Avon Park start looking at the town of Estero, because they are one of only 7 cities in the state of Florida that are AAA bonded, okay? And that's a big deal for a city municipality. And it's things like these that give them the ability to leverage the utility growth, give them the ability to leverage industrial growth so that it can be responsible and regulated at the same time.
What technology or digital tools do you believe are essential for a modern city clerk's office to improve transparency, such as digitized archives, streaming meeting videos, or online public request portals? And what resources would you, as a city manager, commit to this function?
Yeah, I think everybody knows we're in the modern age of technology, right? So, I mean, it's very easy for somebody to hop on and get half their work done with ChatGPT, right? But the reality is we have employees for a reason, but we also need to make their job a lot smoother. So you guys do a great job live streaming, you know, council meetings, and I would encourage that to continue. But the reality is you should be able to move to a records request online. You should be able to move to a database that's on a cloud system that's online. It doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight. We also need to be smart about how much it's going to cost. there's architecture that's involved in that, and there's overall maintenance that's involved in that. But I don't see why the city of Avon Park can't be at the forefront of technology usage. And this goes also to, orthopedics for all intents and purposes. Technology is more than just a computer. It's how you operate daily. It's whether you have an electronic standing desk, whether you have a computer that has enough memory for you to function, or is my staff constantly being bombarded with a slow computer and updates that take half the day, right? This also deals with an IT department that has sufficiently funded budget so they can operate and the city can operate. This also goes just as far as not just the city clerk's office, but utility department, in making sure that every staff member in the city has what they need to function. But the city clerk should be in a technologically advanced, if not the technologically advanced office for the city of Avon Park, because they are at the forefront of public release. They're at the forefront of operations for the city of Avon Park. It should be way more than just Microsoft Office and a computer.
As the central point for public records requests, the city clerk's office relies on timely cooperation from all departments to retrieve documents. What are your expectations for internal collaboration and accountability among staff, the keepers of the records, to facilitate the clerk's fulfillment of these requests, especially when balancing transparency with the legal protection of sensitive data?
Yeah, so I think this starts first off at the idea of a records request. When somebody makes one, we should be answering and acknowledging the request more than just an automated message with a timeline that says we'll get back to you in 30 days. It's a little bit more than that. That goes back to the ability of being a human being. But the reality is there needs to be pressure and there needs to be accountability held at the department level. If I'm asking you for records for a utility rate or a budget that you had for the past 3 years from the finance department, I do not, and I would be very upset if you tell me it's going to take me a week to find a budget from 2021. That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable for a city. You should be able to very easily and effectively pull your records out. Now, if somebody's asking for the balance from, it says found in 1886, if they're asking from the budget from 1886, there's obviously some leeway there, right? It's understandable. But the reality is the past 7 years should be very, very easily accessible. And we should not be waiting the full extent of 30 days and asking for an extension to get an answer back for somebody. The department heads need to be accountable for that, and they need to be accountable. If they don't have the resources, they need to speak up and let the city manager know, and I will attain the resources that they need to effectively do their job.
How do you approach succession planning to ensure the continuity of essential municipal services when key staff members retire or leave, and provide an example of a policy or program that you implemented to address this?
I think this is a great question. When I was here 2 weeks ago, Mr. Macklin, who's in the audience, spoke about succession, right? And last year or whenever it was, you guys had the previous city manager interviews. You spoke about assistant city manager positions, right? The reality is I'm not sure the city of Avon Park could afford an assistant city manager, although I would not be an opponent of it, right? I would be a proponent of the idea of having a delineated second in command for all intents and purposes. But if we cannot do that and we cannot afford that, we need to outline a standard operating procedure that automatically provides continuity. Just like the federal government has, if something happens to the president and vice president, where they go from there, they have a whole line of succession. There's no reason why we cannot amend the job duties and job postings for positions, whether it's the finance director, the city clerk, to include in the absence of. This role steps in and augments. Additionally, in the absence of, in that duties, the city council will take into consideration the salary adjustments as needed. It's as simple as that. Now, we can dive into a much more strategic plan and much more strategic outline of what that looks like, but at the bread and butter of it, the city should have one. The idea of just operating at a whim in the deep end, floating with a 50-pound brick, is absurd. We shouldn't be doing that. It's a failure to the citizens of Avon Park, and it's a failure to the government's efficiency.
Have you reviewed the City of Avon Park's annual budget? And if so, what is your impression of our financial condition?
I have reviewed the 2024-2025 budget, And you operate off of roughly, if I remember correctly, somewhere in the $56, $58 million range, and you have bleeding. And if you don't know that, you should probably look into it. The city of Avon Park is bleeding. There are several avenues where you could be more efficient. One of them is obviously the airport, and that's a very sensitive topic for everybody here. But it's bleeding you dry. You're reaching into your reserves year over year, and it's going to bite you because you're robbing from Peter to pay Paul in the most intensive ways possible. There needs to be a hard conversation about what you can do to fix this before you're on a slippery slope. And it is my duty, and one of my priorities when I get in, is to make a strategic idea and plan and collaborate with the finance director to understand where that is. The reality is we need to start thinking like a business. The city of Avon Park is a business. It is not a municipality. That is the only way you're going to get out of this hole that you're in. That's why the next city manager needs to be somebody like myself who's ran a business successfully. The reality is you need to look at the bottom line. Every time a vehicle moves, you should be thinking it costs money. It costs liability, it costs fuel, it costs maintenance, it costs capital purchases. Every time there's 5 people standing at a water meter, that costs the city money. That costs the citizens money. That's money that can be put towards the deficit or the reserves or the general fund. And that's the mentality the city needs to take. And it's going to be a hard one to swallow. It's going to be a hard one to change. But if you stick with it year over year, you will see the change. And you will see a change on your GAP principles and policies and on your bottom line at the end of the year.
Describe your experience writing and being awarded and managing grants.
So my experience with it is on the other side, is evaluating grant proposals. In the federal government, Department of Interior, and the Bureau of Land Management, we do grant proposals or grant acceptance. So I have experience reading them, reviewing them, collaborating in a committee as to who's awarded, who's not, qualifications, things of that nature. What I don't have is the other side of the fence. But I see that as a strength because in my experience, I know what the minimum qualifications are. I know what the minimum requirements are that people are looking for in grant proposal. And that is something, you know, grant proposal is like what I tell my daughter when she's going to college. It's like scholarship. It's free money. The idea that we're not applying for every grant possible is insane. We should be. We should be helping our bottom line as much as we can. And it would be my duty to make sure that if we don't have the right personnel in the staff who is comfortable and competent to write grants, we need to obtain that person because it will provide a return on the investment, 100%.
Describe how you would keep costs down but continue to provide services to residents.
Yeah, so going back to my previous conversation about having a change in mentality of how we operate, we need to be smart and we need to hold department heads accountable. We need to understand that cost is real, and this is not the idea at the end of the year of use it or lose it is absurd. We shouldn't be spending block money in September because we're going to lose funds and we don't want to kick it back to the budget. That's the wrong answer. That's 100% the wrong answer. We need to put that money back into the budget and reevaluate the budget again. That's what responsible, fiscal, fiduciary accounting looks like. And that's what I plan to hold the department heads to. If you don't need the money, fine. If you need the money, then use what you've been allocated. That's what it's there for. But we need to also think about the transition. Like I said, we don't need 5 people digging a water meter. If it's a training moment, fine, so be it. But we don't need 7 vehicles parked at one resident's house if it's not an emergency. We need to be sharing the load. We need to be sharing and diversifying the responsibility. And it's going to require proactive, not reactive measures.
What is the extent of your experience in public works as it relates to streets and stormwater, and give examples?
Yeah, so I work as a project manager on commercial and industrial projects for stormwater. Additionally, for the United States government, we worked with Texas, Department of Transportation, Kansas, and Oklahoma to redo pipeline and asphalt and roadways that pipelines went under, right? So these are major thoroughfares like I-40, through Texas and things like that. So I'm very confident and comfortable having those conversations with the individuals at Department of Transportation, having those meetings with the engineers to understand what the needs are and what the costs are going to be. And the principles are the same at the city level. The only thing that changes is you folks need to be thinking long-term. You need to be thinking about the idea of what the city is going to be responsible for and what year is that going to hit our budget. That's what you need to be thinking about, not waiting to the year that it happens. We need to be thinking ahead. That's what strategic planning is built for. That's why you do it, because if you don't implement it, you're just wasting man hours making stuff on a Post-it note. So ultimately, the utilities, the stormwater, all need to be planned, and especially with stormwater, it doesn't hurt to have a study done to show you whether you're being effective. Same thing with utilities and utility rates. It doesn't hurt to have a study done to make sure that subject matter experts or industry standards would agree with what our daily practices are. And if they don't, how can we implement the change needed so that we can be more efficient and implement the change needed so that we can better provide for the citizens of Avon Park?
What is the extent of your experience in public works as it relates to water and wastewater, and give an example?
Yeah, so the federal government doesn't deal in water and wastewater. We push that down to the local level. So I can understand how there's some concern from the citizen, or from council and citizens about my experience with that. But I would rely on the idea of, again, that's why we have a public works, public utilities director, right? I'm going to lean on that person to be my right hand to understand the needs and the deficiencies that the city has. Again, I'm going to lean on third-party studies to ensure that we're running at an efficient level. I'm going to lean on that to understand where our deficiencies are with the city. Is it our supply lines? Is it a logistic? Is it an administrative issue? Is it a capital improvements issue? Do we really need to be looking at the infrastructure of a whole new build-out? Do we need to be looking, or can we limp along and just put a Band-Aid on it while we save the money for the reserves for a capital improvement? It's about management and leadership. It's not necessarily about subject matter expertise.
What is the extent of your experience in public works as it relates to sanitation, and give an example?
So my experience in that in the federal government level is minimal. You know, the federal government contracts out sanitation for the few contractors that it has, and I'm very familiar with the idea and why we would contract a sanitation out. It's obviously a cost savings for the city. But if the city wants to retain that idea, you know, that is something we need to look over year and understand, is it a cost savings for us? Is it worth it for the citizens? Is it worth it for our bottom line? Now, I'm not saying we need to X jobs if we have jobs available in all departments, but we need to really be evaluating what we're doing with our money. And I don't think the city has done that year over year for the past several years.
What experiences have you had in union negotiations?
I've had a lot of experience in union negotiations. Almost every employee of the federal government is in the union. I've directly negotiated on committees with the steelworkers union, the unions, electricians union, and the labor force union. So I've directly sat in those union conversations and negotiations with those points of contacts and understand the needs and how sensitive they can be and how time sensitive they can be. So I understand all of that, and I understand there's a fine line that we have to walk as a municipality, and we have to walk in compromise, if you will, with the union folks to understand that their employees are getting exactly what they want to.
What is your approach in dealing with the news media?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, the city of Avon Park has a PR issue, right? We do, and it's a matter of rebranding the city of Avon Park. And I think we're taking steps and strides in the right direction, but we have a long way to go. The reality is there's a reason why many municipalities have a public information officer. There's a reason why they have a communications director, because they handle that. Does the city of Avon Park necessarily need one? No, but it's a good practice and SOP that we can lean on to understand who is responsible and competent to speak on behalf of the city of Avon Park, and at what level of management should that start with? And what level should it end with? I think that is something that needs to be specifically outlined for the city, and the city council needs to understand and be in agreement with it. because ultimately we don't want any more bad publicity out there for the city of Avon Park, but we also want full transparency for the citizens. And we don't want anything that is skewed, anything that is jaded, or anything that gives the inclination that we're not giving the full truth to our citizens.
How would you balance the airport's operational needs with the city's budgetary constraints and environmental concerns? And what would be your vision for the future of the city's airport?
Yeah, the city airport is very interesting. It's probably the best thing that happened to the city of Avon Park in terms of the Brickell building. But the reality is, we have an issue. We have an issue that the city of Avon Park was not expecting. We have an issue that, for all intents and purposes, the cloak was pulled over your head, and we are bleeding at the city of Avon Park in the airport. It is pulling through your bottom line. We need to look at several things, and this would be,
That's the time.
Alrighty. You want to offer a closing statement? We should have plenty of time today. Everybody okay with that?
I'm absolutely okay.
All right, so just take, anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes.
Sure.
And give a closing statement.
So, again, we didn't get through all 32 questions, and I recognize that. The reality is, I am the most unconventional candidate here. I am one that has out-of-the-box thinking. I am one that doesn't have a conventional resume. But I would encourage you to think about this. You've done it the conventional way, and it hasn't worked. So maybe it's time that we do it the unconventional way. Maybe it's time that we shake things up a little bit for the city of Avon Park and do it a way that is deserving of the citizens of Avon Park. I recognize the complexity it's going to be to walk this council. You'd have to be under the biggest rock ever to not notice that this council is split 2-2-1. But the reality is, we have to be able to navigate that at a staff level, and we have to be able to navigate that at a council level to provide what's best for the citizens of Avon Park. That is your job, that is my job, and that is what I intend to carry out. I intend to look at innovative ways to repurpose and re-efficient the government in the local level as all the way down to individual employees. I plan on doing that. I plan on squeezing every penny that we possibly can. If I have to pick up pennies on the sidewalk and put them in our general fund, I will. Because that's what we need to do. We need to look at where we're bleeding. We need to look at what we can do, what are our options. Do we need to liquidate? Do we need to diversify? Do we need to work on our leverage capabilities on our bond rating? These are all things that we need to be looking at in order to make sure the city of Avon Park survives and not in a slippery slope of debt and leveraging. And I would encourage you to think about that when you're thinking about the candidates, and I would encourage you to think about the idea of just shaking things up and providing a new perspective from the outside in. I have plenty of experience at the federal government level, and I would love to bring that to the local level for the city of Avon Park. And I thank you for your opportunity and your time today.
Mr. Fairfield, thank you very much for the interview, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And you guys have a great one.
Yes, sir. All right.
Mayor, can I ask Denise a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Denise, I know every candidate have 45 minutes. And the last time we did this, I think you allowed us to ask questions to a candidate to a particular question.
Yeah, that's what we opened with.
Mm-hmm.
If as I'm going through it, you have something that they hit on something and you want to interject, just
Okay.
do so.
Okay. I don't know if this council ever sat down and discussed whether we'll have a second interview or not. And the reason why I'm asking that, I would love to hear his answers on 31s and 32 if there's a second interview. So how are we gonna manage that?
That's up to council at the end, maybe a topic for Monday night's discussion, open discussion, or at the end of the interview process today, if council wants to stay an extra few minutes and talk through that. It's real perfect.
Yeah.
That was the concern with the 10 questions that we had that we might not get through.
I still think you did good. I just think you did good. I just thought that I would have loved to hear, to me, those are two very important questions when it comes to the city. And I thought that I would have loved to heard his answers on it. Even
Yeah,
though-
the only issue now is, let's say the next candidate gets to the same point, we wouldn't want to then let them go ahead and answer, and give
Right.
them additional time, because we didn't do it the first one, we want to make
Right.
sure it's all the same. So if the next one gets through all the questions, great. If they only get to 25, we kind of got to hold the same thing now.
So then, are they staying where at the end, if we have some time, we could call them back in to ask them at that point?
It wasn't presented to them that way.
Oh,
So if
okay.
one leaves and two stay, I don't think that would be fair
Okay.
to them.
Okay,
But we could certainly bring them back even after on Monday night. That's an option.
All right, anything else? I guess we still have a few minutes for the next one. I'm assuming we'll have to wait till actually 10 o'clock because it's advertised that way, or?
If he's here, I mean, we could go ahead and.
Okay.
Council wants.
Yep.
I'm ready. All of a sudden, turn zero, down, whatever.
Jared's been trying to look at it.
Apparently, it's not working.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, so much about the temperature, but the airflow. Last time, I think it was, pardon me? I'm not gonna go that far, but,
We're very thankful for that.
I think last time, believe it, last time it probably was a battery issue with the thermostat, so I don't know whether he tried that or not.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning. Want me to go ahead?
All right, so we have basically 32. You want to go ahead and give the breakdown?
Sure. So, we're gonna have 45 minutes on the clock in front of you. We're limiting the interview to 45 minutes. We ask that answers be concise, and to the point. There's 32 questions that we hope to get through, and if you're ready, we'll go ahead and start.
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, are we ready?
Yes.
All right. What is your understanding of the council manager form of government? How will you work to support, respect, and regard this form of government?
Well, so the most commonly used form of government is what we have here, where the council acts as more or less a board, and then the city manager as the CEO. So it's the council primarily deals with policy, and then day-to-day operations is that of the city manager. The council does have the decision-making, so just overall, it's my job to bring things to the council, for the council to look at, review, provide different alternatives, and then it's up to the council to make the choice. And it functions really well, because in a well-working system, if a city manager stays around, just no term limits there, and then also has expertise in other areas, that city manager is supposed to provide the level of expertise and to be able to assist the council as needed. Where there's a turnover, but it just provides that consistency for the employees that are out in the field, and instead of having the turnover, they can just have something smooth that rolls across. Can't be partisan. The city manager needs to work across all 5 council members and evenly. So,
What is your philosophy regarding community engagement and keeping residents informed regarding critical issues related to the community, and give an example?
okay, I'll if we have an issue, just say like there was a fire. We had a fire. So one of the things I request is that the fire department reach out to me. During the process. It's not the first thing they need to do, but then I like to reach out to the council to let them know what's going on, provide them with updates, kind of before this is what's I know of. If I can get out there to the scene, which is beneficial because I'm here in the city of Avon Park, so I can go out there and see the issue firsthand. And then once everything's over, I can let the council know what took place and where we are moving forward. That's just a recent example. But if it was something along the lines of a water break, then depending on the number of homes, if it goes over the threshold, then we would go ahead and put that out on our social media platforms. And we have several different platforms. We also have our website that we utilize, and we have push notifications that we can put out. We encourage residents to sign up for those notifications, and that's the best way to put things out.
How would you characterize your management style, and do you believe in having an open door policy for all levels of staff?
I think management styles have to be fluid depending with the situation. Overall, I believe I'm transformational. I try to provide a mission and a vision. When I arrived here as a Public Works Director in 2024, one of the first things I did was we instituted a mission statement and a vision, and I give that to the employees. We go over it. Primarily, it runs through the supervisors, the foreman, and we try to get that out to staff. So in this position, it will go through the directors and then ensure that employees are really understanding what it is that they need to accomplish. What was the second part of that question?
Do you believe in having an open door policy
Okay.
for all staff?
I do believe open door policy is good. It needs to be coordinated though, if possible. So if someone's going to leave a site, they should talk to their immediate supervisor, and then it should go up the chain. So when they're coming in, that I can handle that situation, because I don't want to give an employee information that may go over the top of their supervisor. There may be additional information. So the one good thing about knowing that an employee is going to come see me, I can get a little of the background before they get there, so I can try to hash that out before they get there. Now, if they don't want to say it because of whatever reason, they want some confidence, that's completely understandable. They can just relay that message. An employee can come up and talk to me with no issues.
As a leader, what is the toughest ethical dilemma you've encountered, and why is an ethical workplace a high priority, and how would you foster positive ethos within Avon Park to inspire employees and the community?
I think one of the things that's difficult is if you have ethical dilemmas of people that are over you at the time. So when I was at another municipality, and we had a master plan that we were performing. And one of my concerns in the master plan was that certain things weren't addressed. And I was really conflicted because how we got that information out to the residents to let them know what we're doing. They were expecting certain things to be performed in that master plan, and ultimately they couldn't because of cost savings, or we were trying to drive a project. I did understand the reasoning behind the issues as far as letting them know, because there could be misperceptions and people not fully understand. But I was conflicted to how we said something was good when I knew it wasn't. And I felt that at some time I would have to come back and fix that issue. And then how would I end up going about doing that? Like, I did not want to come put that out to the people, because I didn't want to the residents, because I didn't want to remove their confidence in local government and giving the information. So if they didn't tell me the right thing, how do we know that you're doing the right thing? So it was really conflicting, and ultimately I just decided to move along. So that's that's usually what public administrators do. If you reach certain ethical dilemmas that you can't accomplish and it's not good for the city, you ultimately just go somewhere else if you can't solve it.
In your view, are mid to upper management perspectives more important or valuable than their subordinates? Please explain. And how do you make room for dissenting opinions or views among your senior leadership?
You said repeat that first part, please.
Are mid to upper management perspectives more important and valuable than their subordinates?
No, I think it's equally across the board. I came up from the ground level, and there's plenty of things that you see that aren't seen at the mid-level and upper management level. Now, the thing is that mid-level and upper-level managers need to foster that information sharing. And reward it. So when an employee has an idea, you need to foster that. So they bring it forward. They're not afraid to bring it forward. And you need to use, sometimes if it's the decision-making process, if an employee has an idea and you have an idea, and it's better to go with theirs, because then you're empowering that employee. You want to be able to listen to them, and then as you move along, the more people that you have thinking in the workplace, the better off you are. If there's an issue, I always say talk it out, depending on wherever it is, because we on many occasions within local government, people don't disagree on the final outcome. They just disagree on how to get there. So if they can ultimately get through that process and then work together as a team and just know the intent is good for everyone involved, then that's the best way it should happen. So you have, I think it's equally important, but that I don't look at anybody different. They say, you treat the janitor the same as you treat the CEO. I'm that person. So when I see people if I see employees out in the street, I stop and I say hello to them. And I don't just, I ask them how things are, but I want everyone to feel important in this organization.
What approach have you used in dealing with personnel problems, disciplining, demoting, or firing an employee? Describe your experience, if any, in dealing with charges of discrimination or grievances filed against you or the city you served.
So I've worked with several unions. The unions are the most challenging. We do have unions here. However, they're not as active, and that's, it's a good thing as far as like in being in day-to-day operations. But there are issues where you can expect a grievance every time. The last place I was at was there back for you? So I was in Fort Pierce. When I walked into that situation as a public works director, there was an assistant city manager who was overseeing also part of he was the city engineer as well, and he was overseeing that. So when I walked in, there was like 6 grievances sitting on their desk. And there was plenty of issues. There wasn't trust. People didn't trust management. There were issues. So end up working with the leadership of the unions. We were able to I was able to get rid of the grievances, many of them at my level. Now the ones that we couldn't come to an agreement on, then we took that up to a third step to where we sat with a city manager. We never got to arbitration. The city manager, he would, ultimately the city manager would make the determination on whether to hire or fire. But I think in the process, the city manager needs to be a part of the process to make sure that the director's following the appropriate steps and making sure you're performing the progressive discipline. That's cited here. It's even working with you and HR. I don't move forward without fully making you aware of what's going on, and then getting the feedback from you as HR if you see that I'm doing something wrong. So that's, I try not to get the information out too far to where I'm bringing up an individual's acts to multiple people, but the decision makers are the people that are around me. I like them to know what's going on. And yes, I've had to let people go, and for most times it's because of attendance issues, and almost like 90% of the time it's because of attendance. So as far as just an employee that's performing badly, I've never got rid of an employee for performing badly. It's been attendance, or they manipulated their time clock or time card, something along those lines. So, but yeah, I'm familiar with the progressive discipline process, with unions, everything.
The CRA often tackles projects that take years, involve multiple partners, and come with strong community opinions. How would you support CRA staff during those challenging periods so the work stays positive, productive, and moving forward?
Well, I think CRA staff really needs to be integrated into the community. I think we have different levels. So we have the Chamber of Commerce, which acts really well. We have different community members and organizations, nonprofits throughout the community. I think the CRA, we had a CRA and economic development manager, and we're looking to change that, but to a different type of title. But that person should be out working along in the community, and they should be, I say empowering, but they should be assisting some of the groups that we already have here as far as moving forward with redevelopment and revitalizing the areas within the CRA district. They can also, when they need help, they can reach out for assistance. Because one of the things that I see with CRA, and I've heard for quite some time, is we come up with a plan, but we don't necessarily institute the plan. We don't complete the projects. So looking at it here now, I think my goal is to help that, because the team of CRA is only one here. That's it. It's not like multiple people. There's only one person that has a CRA title in the city. So we ultimately have to assist that person, and then that person has to be inspired to go out and make connections within the community that they can help, and then help revitalize the area and remove the slum and blight. They work hand in hand with the public works directors as well. So I think that it's a full-scale team that needs to assist that CRA person, because there isn't multiple people in the CRA. It's just where we are. Where other cities do have that. I mean, they'll have a couple, but that's not how we're set up.
Redevelopment requires creative thinking, especially when budgets are tight on a project or a project doesn't fit neatly into a traditional process. Can you share an example of how you thought outside the box to get a complex project off the ground?
This one out here, we've been talking about the Donaldson Park. So Donaldson Park has been quite a challenge. When looking at it from afar, we were without a CRA manager for quite some time, project coordinator, and had to step in. So in a council meeting, I remember sitting in the council meeting and walking up, and then we were discussing, in the community center, we were discussing the budget. So I took on many of those projects from CRA and started to develop it. Now, sometimes you don't have the amount of funds for that fiscal year, but you can get additional funds. So one of the things that we were trying to do with, let's say, the pickleball courts, having the roof over the top of that, we were trying to split that up into to consecutive years. But that way we had the funding, and it can drive the project along, because the project can get paid in stages. It doesn't have to be lump sum. So we were into moving that along. And right now, that's kind of how the Donaldson Park is being moved along. It's being moved along in stages, and it has been a challenge. So one of the things that I looked at with the pickleball courts is ultimately that we want to make sure when that does come up to the CRA board, that the CRA board is aware of all the costs that go into it, but try to ensure that we don't have change orders and other issues. So I think the more information that the CRA board has to make the decisions, the better off we are.
Tell us about your most significant work-related accomplishment. What was the accomplishment, and who helped you to achieve the success?
I think the best accomplishment, I think, when the city that I was at prior to this, city of Fort Pierce, it was in shambles as far as the public works department. There was just, the mood was really bad. Going into that, looking and providing structure, there were divisions. There's 6 divisions that included an administrative division, but getting into that in meeting with the division managers, we had weekly updates, and that was really helpful. So when we were able to establish a plan, we did have a vision, but it all linked into the budgeting process. And at the time, the managers, they didn't have a clue how the budgeting worked, the line items that was taken from them by the upper management at the time, their directors, and said, no, you know, you can kind of give me some of the background, but they weren't really woven into the process. So like what we ended up doing is when I walked them through the process in budgeting, they were able to look at their divisions as a whole and completely understand how it operated. Then they took ownership, and as they were taking ownership, they were understanding cost and not just having overages, and they were all working within a budget. All that took place within 10 months. By the time, you know, when I decided to come back to City Avon Park where I live, it was hard to leave there, but just seeing the progress that took place within that short amount of time was amazing. And when I was leaving, the amount of people that were within the organization, there was one individual, because we had almost 100, I think it was 108 employees. It was up to 116, like with other staff. So I had people saying, I haven't spoken much to you because I'm out in the field, but we're going to miss you because we know where we're headed right now. And we all feel like we're a part of something bigger than just us, and we're really appreciative. So for what you did, thank you. And that meant a lot to me. You know, for just the amount of time that we were there and the changes that we were able to make, I think that was pretty impressive. The second thing I would have to say is the airport right now. I mean, walking into that, just before I even started, having to try to get the airport back on track with our team of and council that was just being involved, but getting that together and the community involvement, getting that turned back around to where we're not nervous, and the amount of time I think we had that on the right track was 3 weeks. I mean, that was pretty fast, and we were moving. I've been here a month and a half, and we're moving along quick. So that like short term, that was probably my best. That's the best thing that I've accomplished in local government.
The Insurance Service Office review is an evaluation process that assesses a community's public fire protection services and then assigns a public protection classification, commonly referred to as an ISO rating. This rating ranges from 1 as superior protection to 10, no recognized protection, helps insurance companies determine property insurance premiums for homes and businesses. Have you ever been involved in the ISO process, and if so, at what level, and how did you assist with making the ISO rating better?
Well, yeah, we're as part of the process of just working here with Andy, and the goals were when we were developing our capital. The issues that we had was fire flow issues throughout the city, and identifying areas that where we need to increase the sizes of the water distribution lines. So that was a goal of mine. But you need to understand how much or gather the information of what's in front of you. So having almost 60 miles of 2, 3, and 4-inch line, where 55 miles of that is just 2-inch line, that's insufficient for trying to have a good rating in case there's a fire. So we did have an issue as of recently where our fire hydrant was far away. So as we increase and get our pressures right and get our fire flow correct at that time, then we'll have a better rating from the ISO.
Fire departments in Florida face significant challenges in filling vacancies due to a combination of factors, including high retirement rates, difficulties in recruiting new talent, and retention issues. What ideas would you present to attract or entice people to apply and to encourage people to stay long-term?
I think you look at, for extrinsic factors, I think you look at, you look at pay, you look at benefits. So that's one thing, but the others is just, the other fringe benefits that firefighters do have. We do have a decent looking gym out there now. But overall, I think also the firefighters need to look at the organization as a whole with stability and where they want to be. There are other municipalities that pay better than we do here, but I do feel that this city does offer benefits and pay that is competitive, but they're also where they are interactive in the community, but they have that intrinsic motivation. What most people, the primary reason people leave is because of intrinsic factors, not extrinsic factors. And they want a feeling of, self-value. And it's the things that, it's that for them, they feel good coming to work every day, knowing the people. I mean, being that this community is smaller, some of the community members may know the firefighters' names. I'm pretty sure everybody in the city knows who Chief Marcy is. So it's something that if you can have people instill and have pride within the organization and look and say, hey, this is a place that I can really see myself, because we may not be big now, but I think there's plenty of room in the future to get bigger. And then as you get bigger, you get more opportunities. So if we end up getting other substations in other areas, then instead of just having one fire building, whereas other cities, they have many opportunities for growth, at that time, there could be different levels where people can feel like they're not trapped in. So you always want to be able to think like, hey, in 3 to 5 years or whatever, I can move up to another level. Right now, that may not be the case here, because you may have to wait for someone to retire or something. So that's just, I think that is one of the key factors, just where people look in and they see where can they grow within an organization. And if we can create that, then it'll be beneficial for us.
Emerging trends in the fire service include advances in digital tools, increased environmental hazards, new staffing models, and a stronger focus on firefighter wellness and public outreach. How do you stay informed about trends that could benefit the fire department?
It's through constant contact with the chief and his leadership, and also can look in, and during the budgeting process, that's what you end up looking, that's what you end up evaluating. So at that time, you can see their request, but also during that process, you're looking for background, you're looking for different models or types of equipment that they want to use. The budgeting process does open up so much and broadens your knowledge base of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So from the fire department standpoint, there's always new tools coming out for life safety and firefighting. So I would work with the chief and his team on that.
Explain the negative aspects of outsourcing the city's building and permitting services.
It's you're taking on more liability. You also need the space for those individuals to work. When you outsource something, you have a, let's say, they have the cost to run their department over in Highlands County. So when it's okay to let them do that. I don't personally feel that they're doing a bad job of it. I feel that there's certain aspects of it in oversight of construction sites they should have a better management of. So whether it be roll-off dumpsters or whatever it may be. But right now, with the size that we are, I don't think we could take in a building department into the city. I think that's just more strain that we would end up having on our human resources staff and just the budget overall. I think we're good where we are now, because we're going to have to, there's a good chance that local governments are going to have to be lean moving forward, because you don't want to take on all those departments, even though they are usually they're an enterprise fund, and that money's contained within there. So it's not like, you get money from the building department and it's just going to start funneling over into the general fund. There's the accounting principles that are associated with that. So I'm against it.
Do you prefer the utilization of a code enforcement board or a special magistrate in the code enforcement process outlined in Florida Statute 162?
I think the special magistrate works well for us. I mean, they have to have over 5 years of experience and have some form of code enforcement knowledge. I think it works really well. I think the board, just the majority of what the special magistrate is looking at is objective. So I don't think there's that need to have the board, the magistrate, he has what's in front of him. If we deliver to that special magistrate the information that they need, I think it's pretty cut and dry, and you can just work with a single individual.
Do you believe in capping code enforcement fines as at a specific amount depending on the severity of the violation? Or do you believe in allowing the daily fine to accrue for the 20-year period allowed by the Florida statute, and why?
I feel that it should be kept. I think that, and they should be capped, I guess, for specific fines. But instead of just letting something run, I think it needs to be continuous outreach to that property owner, and then trying to get that property owner to comply rather than just let their fines continue to build, and then the city walk in and take the property, or look to have enough liens to where you can go get the property. Now, maybe that will make somebody not want to fix the situation, but I don't know many people who don't want to fix a deficiency where the code enforcement goes out there to their house or business, right? They want to fix it. So I think it's more of, you should never reach that cap anyways. It should be addressed somehow, some way, that we find a way to help the members of our community fix the issues that they're getting cited for. And we can, and that's just before, because we have to provide warnings through our code. We have to, unless it's like immediate danger to life and safety. So at that point, there should be the interaction in between our code officers, I'm trying to remember Randy's new title now. So the community engagement director, standards director. So that's the community. It's all about community now, right? It's not code enforcement. It's community director. So you wanna ensure that you're making the place look good, but you're going to need the assistance of those homeowners and business owners.
All right, question 16, halfway. What is your level of knowledge and understanding of day-to-day utility operations? And if prior experience, what is the largest utility challenge at a community you faced, and how did you manage the challenge?
I think the largest issue that we face here right now, this is the largest utility that I've worked with. Many have been consecutive, so the water and sewer was provided by other sources, Miami-Dade Water and Sewer. So basically, we would buy water, and then when we sold the sewer, but we were charged for the sewer. So here, the challenge that I've had here is just the undersized water lines. That's been a challenge. We need to move that forward. We've looking at the project, trying to close our loops and any points of restriction. So this is they're undersized water lines, and that also is why you get many of the water breaks that we have here, because they're 2-inch water lines. They're broken easily. They're much easier to break than, say, a 6-inch water main.
What level of knowledge and understanding do you have of municipal planning processes as it pertains to infrastructure? And give an example of an infrastructure planning process you assisted with.
So increasing the capacity of our wastewater treatment plant. So we're looking at other methods to increase. We end up getting a grant for that to assist with that. So, but part of that is the MBR, membrane bioreactors. So that it's using innovation and being able to address the treatment level. So you have your nitrogen and phosphorus. So once we treat the water, that goes back into the ground table. Those levels are looked at by the state. So we were able to look and get a good alternative to treat that water, but also we were looking at soil draining, the soil characteristics, so we can increase, potentially go from 1.5 million gallons to 2 million gallons per day instead, that we can treat just by looking at the soil characteristics.
If there was a special event that involved FDOT road closures, what would need to be brought before council in order to have it approved? And if approved, what happens as far as the city is concerned on the day of the event?
So you need to get there's a special event permit that you need to fill out for FDOT, and that information, when you're going through the process, before that, you need to get that approval as far as with the plan and how it looks. Now, usually we ask the applicants to submit that, but we have templates already because we know pretty much the roads that are closed off. So we just provide that template, and we put that in with the information of the special event packet that comes to council. Council looks at it, determines whether or not they're going to charge the cost, whatever it costs for our employees to go set up the cones, remove the cones. That's a lengthy process, but that ends up, we end up performing that job, and if council agrees to it, then it's just taken care of, and that's it.
Describe any experiences you may have had in developing and recommending policies to the council relating to growth. Examples: annexation, expansion of utilities, subdivision standards.
So I was with Joseph Sleva here, and I'm trying to make this fast, and Danielle Kelly. We did go out and look at, and this is also Christy when she was the interim city manager. We're able to reach out to the 3 cities as well as the county, bring it together to look at an interlocal agreement to where we can establish where we need to get our utilities and where we need to bring our service to. And we were at a good point there of establishing those lines. We did have a map that was brought out, and we were a couple meetings into that to where we were getting that agreement. So that, I guess, is still on the table. I haven't had a chance to get back into that yet, but that was a really good thing, I think, for the city, because that provided a planning of what we needed to see, not only for utilities, but also for purchasing of garbage trucks and whatnot that we can do. We can provide that service if we were to bring it into the city limits.
What technology or digital tools do you believe are essential for a modern city clerk's office to improve transparency, such as digitized archives, streaming meeting videos, or online public request portals? And what resources would you, as a city manager, commit to this function?
So, I think there's many AI tools that are out there that can assist with this. They can listen in like to the meetings, and they can provide dictation. Of course, you review it, but those tools are available to provide that. So that's, if that's available to you, why not? Also for research, city clerk in many areas has to research. With the use of AI, there's plenty of research opportunities through that.
As the central point for public records requests, the city clerk's office relies on timely cooperation from all departments to retrieve documents. What are your expectations for internal collaboration and accountability among staff, the keepers of the records, to facilitate the clerk's fulfillment of these requests, especially when balancing transparency with the legal protection of sensitive data?
I think the goal is to jump on it right away. Don't let it linger. So the longer that you linger, the more likely you are to forget about it in the day-to-day operation. So that should be delivered to the directors, and the directors should then begin doing something about it. If they said, okay, well, if you hear, when do I have to have that by? Now, like you say, now. I want you to start working on it now, preferably, or very soon. So, and then the retention of records and making sure you have good file management, you know where things are. The faster you can do that, the quicker you can move it along. So we do have a way to find things, because we have our IT, Matt in IT, that he helps us find things that we can't find. So if you find that you're taking too much time and you can't find something, sometimes you can just reach out to him and he can make it faster so you can move that along.
How do you approach succession planning to ensure the continuity of essential municipal services when key staff members retire or leave? And provide an example of a policy or program you implemented to address this.
So the succession planning is you need to constantly keep your directors in the know of what's going on. So, and then be able to have their next in line, someone, whoever that is. So if there's a captain in the fire department, or, there's 3 managers across the board and supervisor and managers in the public works department, you need to give them opportunities when available to step in. Succession planning is key. I would say that just as important as succession planning is retention planning, and not letting staff walk out the door, and making sure you're doing everything to keep them here. But if the succession, hopefully we'll get to a point where it's planned succession, right? I think that's the best thing that we can do here, is the planned succession.
Have you reviewed the City of Avon Park's annual budget? And if so, what is your impression of our financial condition?
I think we're in really good shape. I think we have plenty of money coming in from the outside, but we have very little debt. So moving along, our funds are healthy. We have, I think, last time I looked, it was like 14 million in the water and sewer. It was roughly 6 and 6, and general fund, 6 million and 6 million, and the infrastructure, the CRA, I think that's 2 million. So there's money that's out there. I think we're in really good shape of our structure, as far as we don't have a police department, so we don't have some of those costs that, come down directly and are affected, can really affect the budgeting of a local government. That's a hard thing. We do have our own utilities, and we are not on like the coastline where we have to face some of the direct impact of hurricanes, so we're having to have that certain reserve fund. And we don't have to deal with coastal tidal flooding from king tides. So I think we're in a really good spot here in the middle of the state. We have plenty of growth that's coming our way, and I think we're able to take the impact of whatever comes to us. We just have to be able to maneuver around it.
Describe your experience writing, being awarded, and managing grants.
So I've helped write grants when I was in Bal Harbor. We received grants in stormwater there. We've also, I wasn't in the beginning stage of process when we received a grant for the Lake Tulane Lift Station project, but I was in there, part of the process for the 11.5 million that we did receive from the state for our wastewater treatment plant. Working in compliance with the grants, you need to make sure that you're following the steps associated with it. And one of the best ways to do that is have people locked into it throughout the duration and accurate record keeping. So one of the things that, even just say in the Public Works Department, that's why we brought in a utility management analyst to assist with that on the paperwork side of things, to where that can be submitted and be like, have a track of those timelines. Also, if you walk into the finance office, there's a big whiteboard that has all the grants and everything, and we look at it from that standpoint. So I'm familiar with the grant process, getting grants and managing them.
Describe how you would keep costs down but continue to provide services to residents.
I think you have to be more efficient. You have to have a knowledgeable staff, and that can be putting 2 routes closer together. It's not hard to be efficient. You just have to have buy-in from staff. There's 8-hour days, but you don't always get 8 hours of work. A good number is, if you're somewhere around the 6.5 hour range, somewhere you're pretty good, but if you're down in the 5s. So you just try to make sure that you're getting the most out of them while encouraging them to do a good job, and rewarding, having a good recognition program to try to get employees to do better. And you also use innovation. So where you can innovate and cut cost, that's what you do. So just say, garbage trucks. The next garbage truck that I would purchase would be a automated side loader. It works fast. It services many more homes, and those are ways that you would end up, being more efficient.
What is the extent of your experience in public works as it relates to street and stormwater, and give an example?
I've been in the public works side of things now for over 20 years. In private and local. What was the last part of that question?
as
Sorry.
it relates to the streets and stormwater
Okay,
side.
so streets and stormwater, I'm familiar with doing roadway projects, milling, if we have to go back and go into base. I am a former heavy equipment operator, so I know things that are involved with the operation. Stormwater, we have to submit for our MS4 permit, we do have to submit paperwork for compliance-related issues. Basically, on stormwater, you just want to make sure the streets are clean, because that ultimately gets down and affects your water quality. So the more that you can keep from getting into the storm sewer system sediment and whatnot, that's what you need to focus on.
Okay. With your extensive experience in public works, as it relates to water and wastewater, give an example.
Being over water and sewer, I've had to, one of my first weeks as a director in Bay Harbor Islands, they were under a consent, an order from, it was a moratorium. So basically, I had to get them out of moratorium, come up with an action plan, submit that to the county, which basically they were the ones who oversaw how the water and sewer worked. And we were able to get them out of moratorium so where they can continue building again, but also provide framework for our utility system moving forward. So that was one of.
What is the extent of your experience in public works as it relates to sanitation, and give an example?
Many of the sanitations, solid waste collection I've worked with has been contractual, but here and in Fort Pierce, that we had, it was, I want to say it was around $13 million budget in solid waste. So there were a significant amount of side load trucks, and, the grapple trucks and front load. The commercial industry does drive the revenue side of things for the solid waste collection. And when I was there, I was able to change up our collection, how we did things, and basically separate it like I did here with, alternating weeks.
What experiences have you had in union negotiations?
I've been part of several union negotiating teams, so it is. I haven't had any hard standing issues with trying to do that. As far as come up with resolutions, usually they've been pretty smooth. On certain things that aren't so smooth, I'm able to provide information from my perspective, and then usually I can get the buy-in from the stewards and from the negotiating team, the union president and vice president.
What is your approach in dealing with the news media?
You want to be accurate with what you say. Be careful to. Is that a hard?
That's your time.
Is that a hard time there?
That's a hard time.
Yeah, you can finish your response and then do a closing statement.
Okay. You want to be accurate with what you tell the news media.
Hold on, excuse
Hello,
me,
yeah, yeah.
because we didn't give the last applicant a time to finish his statement.
So let's,
Yeah.
Yes, he
Yeah.
was.
yes.
That's fine.
So just a 2 to 5 minute closing statement.
Okay.
please.
Just a closing statement? Well, I've been in local government for almost 20 years. I started out in Miami Beach. I was there working in a public works / parks department. I really enjoyed my time there. I didn't really foresee myself moving too far along as far as moving up the ladder or anything like that. But as I got into public service, I really appreciated the customer contact and the ability to make a positive change in the community. As part of that, I realized in order for me to make a bigger change, I would have to expand my education, and at that point, then I started taking on educational opportunities. But I think, some people when they go to school originally and they pick a career and they figure out what they want to do. For me, I didn't quite know. I went into the service. I was an avionics technician and 82nd Airborne Division for 5 years. And I got out, wasn't quite sure. But when I'm performing this job, the multiple jobs that, working in construction, I was able to work from the ground and see things that really assisted me along as either an operations supervisor or a public works director, and ultimately having an opportunity to serve as an interim for this short period of time. It's really helped me in my decision-making process because I put myself in the shoes of of the people that I work with. I always say, I don't say the people work for me, I work with them. I think this city has many positive aspects that can push it along. I see a knowledgeable council. I think you guys do an absolutely great job. My goal is to try to get our focus on objectives and then move us towards objectives and, you know, continuity, right? Just being together and make sure that we have, you know, a single focus. There's things that may come into play, whether it be retreats that we can do to try to get things maybe a little less formal, but get more information sharing. Of course, it would be out in the public, but to get the council to where we're seeing positive things that we can actually do. You deliver on small deliverables, and then you hit your bigger projects. My goal coming up this say in the first year is I want to make sure that we can get these projects knocked out, get some of the things in CRA taken care of that we need to take care of, but really make sure we're good with that, with our grants that we have in front of us. You're going to need a knowledgeable person to be able to manage these grants and have a good understanding of the utility side. I believe I have that. I'm a level 1 in a water distribution operator and level A in wastewater collection and level A in stormwater. I'm also an arborist. So many of the things that I speak about, I have knowledge of. But one of the most important things that you need to have knowledge of is what you don't have knowledge of. So if you don't have it, don't put yourself in a bind and say something. Go find it out, work with the council, get their opinions of what it is that they want to accomplish, but really understand where they're going. As just listening to the discussion, listening to the community has really good ideas. There's active members of the community that have great ideas. So as they come up, you take notes, you go back. Sometimes we have the ability to go back and listen to our meetings and see what people say. Sometimes you miss things. Sometimes I go back and I'll listen just to say, did I miss something in my note-taking process? That way I can hear everything and really try to get the feel of where council was. I think in the short term that I've been here, it's been an absolute pleasure. I took a big risk of leaving where I was to come back here. And I've had absolute pride. The fulfillment aspect of delivering for people in this community, going out and meeting additional members who come up to me and wish me the best of luck. It's a great thing. And those that are frustrated, going out and residents. So one of the residents that was up here that had an issue with the water, going out there, making that contact, working with the public works director, and then having that, just that interaction with them and fixing wrongs that we have and just continuously doing that. It's my goal to make sure that, the needs of the city always are over my needs. So it would be an absolute honor if you guys selected me, the council selected me. I live here, I love it, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Jason.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Take just a 2-minute break. I'll be right back.
to you? Okay. All right. Ooh.
Get out of there.
Okay. All right, is our next applicant ready?
Mayor, before we begin,
Mm-hmm.
can I ask Denise a question?
Only if you ask it, yeah.
Okay. Are all these candidates are veterans, correct?
No,
Which one is not?
Mr. Honeycutt.
Okay. I thought I saw that he was a member of the Coast Guard.
I was the auxiliary. I was the vice flotilla commander here in Polk County, where I started that detachment.
Okay.
But it was basically
that
not
doesn't
considered.
consider
It's not
military?
considered
Okay.
military, no.
Okay. Thank you.
With that, we have Mr. Stephen Honeycutt. You want to go ahead and state your name there, and we'll give an overview of what we're about to do.
Sure, Stephen Honeycutt, Hunnicutt.
Yes, sir.
So what we're going to do, it's a timed interview. We're going to limit it to the 45 minutes. We have 32 questions that we're going to go through. We're going to get through as many as we can, but try to keep your answers concise and direct. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, and with that, if we're ready to begin,
Go ahead.
what is your understanding of the council manager form of government, and how will you work to support, respect, and regard this form of government?
Well, it's the city council, basically the form of government that you have is something that I served as for 8 years as mayor and commissioner in the city of Winter Haven, which is the second largest city in Polk County. So I've sat on that side of the diocese as mayor and commission, so I understand how it operates. It's almost like a board, and then the city manager is the CEI type of form. You all set the legislative policy, you hand it down to the manager, and he makes sure that that stuff gets carried out. So everything that you guys do, good, bad, or indifferent, I've felt those pressures, I understand those pressures, but I've also been on the other side here where I understand how it works. So I can respect, and each and every one of you should be commended for what you want to do, because everybody at some time should want to step up to serve the city that they work in. So again, I applaud you guys for doing that. But like I said, I'm kind of unique because, like I said, I served 8 years as a mayor and commissioner, so I completely understand. I went through the EMU course through the Florida League of Cities and also the advanced. I've been involved in Florida League of Cities for 8 years. 7 years is 7 different times I've got the Home Rule Hero Award, where I have fought for cities and stuff as an elected official and even as a assistant and city manager. So the job that you guys have is very tough. Sometimes it's unappreciated, but I think that the role between the city manager and the council or commission, I think there has to always be open communication, and you have to understand where they're coming from, because at the end of the day, they're your 5 bosses, and you have to respect what they hand down to you.
What is your philosophy regarding community engagement and keeping residents informed regarding critical issues related to the community, and give an example?
Well, transparency is everything. I think that when basically, we're in the people business. I think if you can't keep transparency open, I think then people are going to paint their own pictures. We live in a world today that we've got cell phones and Facebook pages, so I mean, people are going to go out and post things and say things. So I think a lot of it is you have, me personally, have an open door policy. Because you're going to have people that are going to come to the commission meetings, they're going to say things that, that basically it should have maybe been dealt with prior hand to be coming to the commission meetings. A lot of it is just getting out from behind the desk and working with the community as a whole. At the end of the day, you're in the people business, and you come to work every day to do city business. So I think just transparency is the key in getting out and understanding the wants and the needs, because every community is different. There's not one community in the state of Florida that's the same. So I think it's just tell that story, have a good storyteller. Listening when the residents come in, if they have an issue, is key. And my thing as an assistant and a town administrator is always try to resolve things before they get into the council's hands. I think that way it makes things a lot easier, because when it comes time to the meetings, we want to do and conduct city business, because the only time that you guys actually get to talk and converse on what your wants and needs are is at those meetings. And sometimes, you can get stuff, and the residents have the right to come up forward and speak, but sometimes it can get pretty lengthy. So I think to have open communications with the residents, transparent, being honest, is very important.
How would you characterize your management style, and do you believe in having an open door policy for all levels of staff?
I believe open door policy is the only thing that works. My management style is basically communication, collaboration, and respect. I think if you don't have those 3 issues, then basically, again, you're not going to be able to work successful with staff. I think the city of Avon Park, from the little bit that I've known and the people that I've talked to, I think you guys have some great staff here, especially at the director's level. That's something I think that basically they continue to go on. I know that retaining those individuals is tough. One of the things that we did in Davenport when we came back from an FCCMA meeting was we do evaluations for the staff, and I think that you always want to make sure that they're done timely because the employee wants to know that they feel important and then they're evaluated on time. The other thing is that we started, which was kind of unique, is we basically at the end of the year, we bring all the employees in from each department and we ask them to rate management. We want to know what you feel about us. So they'll rate it from a 1 to 10, no name, drop it in a box, and that basically allows us to take a step back to assess ourselves. But the biggest thing is communication. You have to have communication, collaboration, and respect for each other.
As a leader, what is the toughest ethical dilemma you have encountered, and why is an ethical workplace a high priority, and how would you foster positive ethos within Avon Park to inspire employees and the community?
Well, I think to have an ethical workplace it should always be a priority because you're being entrusted by the people that you work for, the residents of the city. They're giving you their money. They elect the body up here, so it is a trust. So I think you have to be ethical in everything that you do. Being a member of the ICMA and FCCMA, there is a code of ethics that they hold your feet to the fire. And I'm working on getting my CPM through ICMA, so that process is very still to my heart. In fact, everywhere I've worked, I've always had the code of ethics sitting on top of my desk or my shelf. As far as an issue on ethical, there was some issues that came up in one of the cities I worked with where there was a change in city managers when I was at a different level of staffing, and there were some things that were going on that was basically internally with some of the department heads and stuff like that, which caused a lot of employees to leave at the time. And at that point in time, it was a tough situation because there was nothing I could do at my level, but it was something that was frustrating because I saw what it was doing to the individual staffing, and that city lost a lot of good staff. So just not being able to communicate at that level and being able to get in and say something, it was very difficult.
In your view, are mid to upper management perspectives more important or valuable than their subordinates? Please explain, and how do you make room for dissenting opinions or views among your senior leadership?
Well, first of all, I think that, everybody's opinion should matter. Even the guy that's out digging a hole and putting in a water meter, the person cutting the grass, because at the end of the day, you're only successful by the people that are around you that are successful. Every city I've been involved in, we have weekly staff meetings with our department heads. Because unfortunately, everybody thinks the city's a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, but it's really a 24/7. You have your fire department here, you have your utilities that water's under the ground. An issue may come up in HR that, unless we had those communications and we set that time aside that we have that 20 minutes, half an hour, 45-minute staff meeting, I need to know what's going on in your department. You need to know what's going on with mine. If people aren't coming to the council meetings, it's preparation, and it all goes back to communications. But at the end of the day, a lot of times you'll have different management styles of city managers that come in, they want to sit behind a desk and basically try to manage the city. My philosophy is I think it's very important to get out in the field. I think it's important to go out and see what the guys are doing their job. I've gone out, jumped in a hole and helped them dig holes. I've been called out when they've had somebody run over a hydrant. I want to be there to see what they're doing to make sure that fix is done, to let them know that, hey, if you're here for me, I'm always going to be here for you. But I think you have to have that, again, it goes back to communications. You have to respect what your department's head have to say, and you have to listen to them. Because at the end of the day, they have a difficult job to do. It all works hand in hand. And in order for you to be successful, the people around you have to be successful. And the professional development that you bring on is what's key for them.
What approach have you used in dealing with personnel problems, disciplining, demoting, or firing an employee? Describe your experience, if any, in dealing with charges of discrimination or grievances filed against you or the city you serve.
I've never had a discrimination lawsuit filed or any issues, even in law enforcement. The long time I served in law enforcement, because like I said, if you treat everybody the same, I don't think you're going to run into those issues. The hardest thing you ever have to do in management, of course, is letting somebody to go, especially if they've got a family to feed. Again, it goes back to doing the evaluations on time. I know that you guys have some unions here, so you deal with some of that stuff here that you have to go through the collective bargaining process. But at the end of the day, if you have department heads, you let them handle the situations at their level first. And then basically if there's a write-up, a verbal or something like that, there's documentation that's in their employee file. Because if it's not there, you can't just bring somebody in and say, well, you did something terrible. you're gone. So I think that you have to go through some type of form of a progressive discipline. A lot of times, just a verbal counseling works. It depends on the situation. Everything's different. But again, like I said, you have to make sure that they have the proper tools that they're doing the job. And basically, it's just communication. Now, outside of that, like I said, there was a situation as an assistant. We had a guy that was in a utilities department. He took a truck home. We have a drug policy that's very strict, and he wrecked the vehicle. And of course, when we showed up at the scene, the way our policy is with our workman's comp, he had to go get drug tests, and he just looked at me and said, "There's no need for me to go because I'm not going to pass." And he was a really good employee. He'd been there for 9 years. He was always dependable, but it was his decision he made, so that was very difficult for me because he had the licensing and everything else that went behind it.
The CRA often tackles projects that take years, involve multiple partners, and come with strong community opinions. How would you support CRA staff during those challenging periods so the work stays positive, productive, and moving forward?
CRAs are important. There's still cities in the state that don't have CRAs. Florida Statute 163 basically outlines everything that can be done with CRAs, how they're supposed to operate, how the fundings are supposed to move through, how the TIF, the tax increment financing, is supposed to be done. I think right now you're sitting at about $3 million in your CRA money, according to your budget, if my numbers are correct. I think the CRA can be a very vital tool. And when you look at what they were actually founded and formed for, was basically blighted properties, some attainable or affordable housing. You guys have, one of the things that attracted me to Avon Park is your Main Street. You're very unique with your Main Street. You've got 13 historical buildings out here, and then the Jakarta Hotel out there that's been around forever, that actually Babe Ruth came and stayed back in the 20s when they played the St. Louis Cardinals. There's some things here that I think that can be done. You've got FOSSA grants. There's grants out there that they can work with, but you have to be very supportive. That person, whoever that person is, I think it's critical that they have the proper experience. You've got CRAs. I think Ronnie Woods, who was in charge of Main Street, just went back to Lakeville. So I think you reach out to your adjoining cities on their CRAs and let them partner and work with them so you can do a collaboration. But one of the things that you guys have, when I was sitting on your side in Winter Haven, our CRA, we didn't really have much of a downtown. Once we really partnered with the CRA and the Main Street, we brought in an investor who basically just started really renovating it. Basically everybody looks at Winter Park. They talk about Winter Park. I know that HGTV just did some things up here in Sebring. We came up here and walked around there, but I think that the right person in place can really make something of your Main Street here that everybody can be proud of. You've got some great little diners here that are great to eat, as far as the food. I think you've got some facilities here with some of the FOSSA grants and some of the stuff they can do. Your assets here with your lakes for your boating, your fishing. People should be exciting to want to be part of the city and watch that stuff grow. But I think you really have to support the CRA, but you have to have the right person in place. The other thing is you want to meet with council and have a retreat. I think you want to do an overlay of the CRA to see what it is that they think needs to be done. And then you set goals and I think drop dates on how you get that. But again, at the end of the day, what are you going to do with $3 million? Now, there's funding sources out there that you can go after. Grants are very competitive, but again, you have to know how they work upstate. You have to know people upstate. We actually worked with a lobbyist in Davenport. But again, if you know your elected body upstate, your senators, your local representatives, you can get them to sponsor a letter on what you're trying to do to get it into the state budget. You can get funding with that. You guys just got $22 million for your water facilities to basically do an assessment. I don't know if it was done through, one of your engineers that they did an assessment, worked it through, but again, the paperwork is going to be very timely on that. But I think the CRA is something you guys should be proud of, that you have one. I think it needs to be actually used properly. I know that the state has tried to make changes in the CRA. They've actually tried to terminate it sometimes. They've talked about timeframes. But there's been pushback with the league, but you guys are fortunate. I think with your downtown, it could be something that everybody in the future can really be proud of.
Redevelopment requires creative thinking, especially when budgets are tight or a project doesn't fit neatly into a traditional process. Can you share an example of how you've thought outside the box to get a complex project off the ground?
Well, there's a lot of those. Wow. A lot of it, at the end of the day, when you go through the budget process, you have to sit down with your staff, first of all. They started here in May, so it's right around the corner. It seems like it always comes up fast. Again, it's going to come down to the collective, you five up here, what is your priorities? And then I have to figure out how am I gonna go pay for it. Then you have to look at the budget and you look at trade-offs. Right now, you're about $70 million budget. I mean, you've done some things in the budget that I guess that I would probably ask about. There was questions that I saw in there. But again, one of the projects that we did, and I know that the deputy mayor serves on the TPO, it was very difficult to get up and going. We never got any funding from any TPO projects. We didn't have a person that was LEED certified, so we did an intergovernmental agreement with Polk County. And we basically, you have to have somebody that sits on the TPO to basically make votes. So we wanted an infrastructure project around a community center that had a walking trail that we converted into like a fitness facility. So that was something that was very hard. It took me about 2.5 years to actually get it on the list. And a lot of that was the politics. Davenport at the time was only probably about a 6,000 populated city. So Lakeland and Winter Haven basically engulfed a lot of that stuff. But just going to the meetings and letting them know that we weren't going away eventually got on the list, thanks with the help of one of our elected officials. But that was a very difficult project to get moving forward.
Tell us about your most significant work-related accomplishment. What was the accomplishment and who helped you achieve the success?
Well, I haven't worked in a lot of cities. Like I said, I served in Winter Haven as an elected official. Then I was in Haines City for 7 years, and then I went to Davenport when I was called over to go to work. So I've been really fortunate to work with some great city managers. When I was in Haines City, I started out in code enforcement. And one of the things I worked in, one of the worst, I shouldn't say worst, it was one of the most blighted neighborhoods in Haines City. It's called the Oakland community. Then when I went back there, there was a lot of properties back there that were just really bad. Some of them had increasing liens and stuff like that on it. And I couldn't fix on the outside unless I knew what the issue was on the inside. So I would knock on doors and talk to people. And then I would go to the city manager and I said, okay, what tools do I have? One of the things that I don't see that Avon Park participates in, and we didn't do it in Haines City, we weren't doing it at the time, in Davenport, which we're doing now, is you have SHIP funding. And a lot of that money, because of the size of the city, it all goes to the county, and then the county basically administer it. But what the SHIP funding does is allows individuals with residents that are very deplorable or that besides the living conditions, that they'll come in and unless they've changed the requirements, I don't think they have, you have to prove that you own the home, you have no liens on it, and you have property insurance, you've had it insured for a year. And a lot of times they'll come in and build you what I call a cookie cutter home. So I ended up doing, I think it was 7 homes back in Haines City. We did a lot of stuff with Habitat of Humanitarian. We basically worked with the lady there at the time where we had properties that we had liens on that were vacant lots that we turned over to them to get back on the tax rolls. And just bringing that community up to where everybody felt more secured in their homes, they felt safer in their homes, they started seeing an improvement in their neighborhoods. And to me, I can go back in that community today, and I think that was the biggest thing, is just helping that particular community out that at the time they've always seemed like they were put on the back burner.
The Insurance Service Office review is an evaluation process that assesses a community's public fire protection services and then assigns a public protection classification, commonly referred to an ISO rating. The rating ranges from 1 being superior to 10 no recognized protection, and it helps insurance companies determine property insurance premiums for homes and businesses. Have you ever been involved in the ISO process, and if so, at what level, and how did you assist with making the ISO rating better?
A lot of the residents that yes, I have been in Davenport. When I started in Davenport, it seemed like the first 6 years we were doing nothing but projects. I mean, it was just constant. We had an older tradition neighborhood, but the ISO is very important. A lot of the homeowners weren't aware of it because it impacts your property values. So ours at the time was a 4. Our fire department, we had a 4. So we went to the fire chief and we said, how can we fix it? But of course, we knew it's all controlled by water pressures that come out of the fire hydrants. We had a neighborhood back there we call the traditional neighborhood under our land development regulations. It's an older community. They're 90-foot lots. They basically have, they had the driveways or the roads in the back that were dirt where the garbage used to go through. So we had to go up to the state, get some SRF funding, and basically we took that neighborhood and it made it look like it had gone through a war. We had to take out the 2-inch lines, replace it with 8-inch lines to increase that. We brought it up to Bay Street, which a lot of our commercial property was at. So just by doing that alone, in that neighborhood, it brought it up to a 2. We had a lot of new development coming in, so all that infrastructure they were putting in was brand new. But we resubmitted it last year, and we were real close to a 1. We didn't quite get a 1, but we've got some stuff we got to do that Davenport has to do up and down North Boulevard, and that should take care of that to get it back up to a 1. But it's very, very important. A lot of it has to do with water pressure. The other thing that you want to do is make sure that your fire department's going out on a timely matter, which I'm sure they are, and testing the flow that comes out of the fire hydrants to make sure that they're there. The last thing you want to do is go to a fire. You guys just had a big one here. Is go to a fire, you open up a hydrant, nothing comes out but dust. So that's very important, and that has happened. So you want to make sure that those hydrants are working properly and effectively.
Fire departments in Florida face significant challenges in filling vacancies due to a combination of factors, including high retirement rates, difficulties in recruiting new talent, and retention issues. What ideas would you present to attract or entice people to apply and to encourage people to stay long-term?
Well, you always want to have all your employees stay, because the longer they stay, it makes your job easier because you know what they're doing. I think that every city, one of the biggest things that's always talked about is retention, is holding on to people. Of course, your fire departments and your police departments always seem to have the highest turnover. You get a younger person coming there, and they're always going to jump ship to go to where there's more income. I think you guys have a fire chief that's been doing this since 1999. I think you want to sit down and make sure that the people that he have that we're retaining, you want to make sure there's professional development. They have the proper equipment. They have the proper fire, everything that they're doing, and talk to the individuals. And every so often, every year, you should get with HR and make sure that you're doing some type of basically a pay scale thing to go out to look to see what the other cities are doing, to see if you're comparable to what your surrounding cities are making, because the last thing you want to do is have somebody 7 years and they jump ship and go somewhere else, because every time you bring somebody in, especially a firefighter, you got to equipment them. You got to go out and buy all the equipment, the fire equipment. So it costs money to bring that person in, train them, and go through that. The other things that you can do that we did is we had one fire station before we built Station 2, is we brought some people in on a part-time basis, and then they basically went full-time, because you have departments that do have part-timers. A lot of that starts with leadership. And basically making sure that they're part of something. But when I started in Davenport, some of the equipment that we had was just not up to par. And that was the biggest rate of the turnover, was basically that, the equipment was old, the fire trucks were old. That was the biggest issue. I know that some of the counties have bigger budgets. We do have a fire assessment fee, so I think that has to be looked at on how that's being spent. There's training, there's schools and stuff that they can go to. But I think a lot of it, and when we did things where we basically got people locally that lived in the city, and we got to the level and point where we could put them through the fire school and pay for it and stuff like that. And we brought homegrown individuals here, so they were our best word of mouth.
Emerging trends in the fire service include advances in digital tools, increased environmental hazards, new staffing models, and a stronger focus on firefighter wellness and public outreach. How do you stay informed about trends that could benefit the fire department?
Well, a lot of it's just is dealing with your chief. Again, like I said, you want to have the proper people in place. I mean, Florida Statute 175 deals with the funding when it comes to the insurance offsets. It has to do with the stuff for the firefighters that you can use when it comes to the insurance. The insurance rates have always gone up. I think the fire standard schools and stuff like that are basically, they change all the time. One of the things is making sure that they have their fire equipment's proper. All their breathing apparatus is proper, and like I said, all the equipment stuff that they had. One of the things that we have done in the past, that we did in Davenport, is, like I said, we knew with our growth, we went from 4,400 residents, and when I left, depending on which Bieber multiplier that you use, Davenport's now probably close to 23,000. So we knew we had to build another fire department across the tracks because of the trains. One of the things that the chief had just done, we implemented a system called SAM Boost. And what that does is, it was basically something that our chief, and we'd go up to Indianapolis, which has the largest fire convention every year. So the chief would go up there. When we knew we needed a fire truck, some of the Pierces and some of these fire trucks can take a year to be built. And sometimes you don't have that. And some of these fire trucks now, you're talking $1 million, depending on what puffers, what ladders you get. They can be very expensive, and that money that's in that fire assessment fee can be gobbled up really quick. What we've done is we go up to the shows and we would find out what's on display and probably save $60,000 to $70,000 by driving one of those vehicles back purchasing it there. So getting with finance and council to make sure that they were okay with that. So when we went there, if we found a good deal, we were going to bring it back and drive it. The other thing with the sand boost system, what that does is it's something that they approached us up there, and some of the cities and counties are starting to look at it now. What it does is the system is put on the fire truck, it's computerized. So when that person goes into fight a fire, it basically will set the system up to where it doesn't take two people to go in now to fight that fire. It will automatically kick the pressure on, know what pressure they have to have, set it up where that person go and fight that fire, so you don't have to have that second person go in to hold that hose or somebody sitting at that truck. So it's time consuming, 'cause it's something that's very efficient.
Explain the negative aspects of outsourcing the city's building and permitting services.
Well, again, that's going to come down to the council. I mean, there are cities that contract it out. There's some cities that don't have it. When you look at the building department, it becomes an enterprise fund. I know there's some cities that have gotten issues with them where they don't. You have to be careful where you spend the money when you have a building department. I think that every city should have at least a planner. Because if you don't plan, then how do you know where you're going? I think the council should be able to set how we want to move the city forward. If it's the council's pleasure that they don't feel that we need to have a building department, if it's working well with Highlands County, then again, that's up to the pleasure of the council. But I think by having a planner in-house works well with your utilities department, because you have stuff at your utilities department like GIS. You have the SCADA systems. And what that does with the planner, when they come in and they start doing inventory of roads, when you have your street departments, that planner can implement all that stuff in the GIS system and work well with them. So when you go out and you install new water lines, you want to know where those shutoff valves are at. So if you got something loop, you don't have an issue with the blow brake. And then your LDRs. I don't know when the last time your LDRs were looked at. I know there's stuff in it that's not current or up to code. I know that you just now went through Central Florida Planning Development Council. I know that you used Marissa and Jennifer and them over there. But you're going through your CIP because there were some changes upstate with your capital improvement plan. I know that a lot of people use them 5 years. Realistically, they want to do a 10-year look. They really are looking at things in the CIPs to where you want to have stuff that has to do with infrastructure and long-term. One of the things that Highlands County has to understand, right down the street is Polk County. Polk County is getting built out. And I can tell you it's going to be coming to your door. And if you haven't had somebody that's experienced that, it's going to cause problems. Because the problem is a lot of people don't want growth. They don't want to change. But in order for you as elected body to be sufficient financially, you have to accept some of that growth. You have a Walmart here that's probably your largest tax base payer for your millage. The other thing that you have to get ready for when your budget, we all know what's coming except in November, is the governor wants to do away with property tax. So how much of that money on homesteaded properties are we going to lose when it comes to that? How do we basically make that up? Do we make it up in commercial? Because realistically, your commercial millage is where it's really at, not so much of your residential. But again, I think, again, at the end of the day, I mean, the building department, we were doing $6 million in revenues on our building department. But we had a lot of growth. We were also doing 100 brand new COs on homes a month. So again, at the end of the day, that's the pleasure of the commission. If that's something the commission wishes that they want, then that's something that I would go after. But I think that having a planner offsets and helps with utilities.
Do you prefer the utilization of a code enforcement board or a special magistrate in the code enforcement process outlined in Florida Statute 162?
I think it's more important to have a special magistrate versus a code board. I think that a lot of times people will want a code board, the community, but I think the problem you got to be careful with the code board is when you get into a code board, that's where favoritism, you get into those fine lines that you have to be careful with. I think having an attorney as a special magistrate, he's unbiased. He's going to come in. He's going to listen to what case is presented, make sure that they've completed their due process, and basically sign off on whatever order or whatever fine or whatever thing that they've brought forward to them. And it kind of keeps you out of legalities, because even if you have a code board, you're still going to have the attorney look at everything and sign off on it. But whatever your charter dictates, I've been in a situation where I've seen both. But doing code enforcement, I would always prefer a special magistrate. It just makes it a lot easier. The process is a lot smoother and a lot untainted.
Do you believe in capping code enforcement fines at a specific amount depending on the severity of the violation? Or do you believe in allowing the daily fine to accrue for the 20-year period allowed by Florida statute, and why?
That's a good question, because what I believe in and what statute 162 is, I'm a little bit different. I believe that code enforcement should be a positive tool for the community. I did it for 7 years, and I believe that, it should be a situation that you go out there, your job as a code officer is basically voluntary compliance first and foremost. I think that when you go through your training through the state, face levels 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, whatever you have, there, at the end of the day, it's voluntary compliance. I think to put a lien on a piece of property that's worth $30,000 and now you've got, $200,000 or $500,000 of liens, I think is crazy. I know that the state has limitations. We did things in Davenport when I got in there that we basically did a situation where people could come in as long as they were complied. We would reduce the liens. We would do it once a year, and other than paying what the administrative costs were. If you're going to take a property and foreclose on it, I think that you need to figure out what you're going to do with that property. You're going to turn it over to Habitat to do something, or are you just going to let the grass grow? Now the city has to maintain it. Like I said, code enforcement's important, but I think their goal should always be voluntary compliance, because I've always said you can't fix on the outside if you don't know what's going on the inside. One of the things that we did, that I've done in the state of Florida, every student that graduate has to have some type of community service. So you have people out here that grass. I mean, that's probably your largest thing when it gets into homes. We go out, look at, you guys have your Masonic Lodge here, you have your Rotary Club, you've got several churches here. Get people out that maybe go out, and if the person has a lawnmower, get that student from a school. You have 3 schools right here with the high school. Maybe those students will come out, mow that person's property. You sign off on their letter for community service, problem resolved.
Question 16, halfway there. What is your level of knowledge and understanding of day-to-day utility operations? If prior experience, what is the largest utility challenge at a community you faced, and how did you manage this challenge?
Well, like I said, when we got to Davenport, our water pressure flow was terrible. We had hydrants that didn't, that basically had issues. Our water treatment facility that we had was basically one that we bought used. And with our growth, we had to do something. Water is probably going to be one of the most expensive commodities, I think, that any city that can look at as we go down the path. So one of the things that we did in Davenport, of course, we built a brand new water treatment facility. We're pumping close to probably 7 MGDs there a day. Going through the water use permit was a crazy thing because the Southwest Water Management District. So the water treatment facility was probably one of the largest things that, that process. Again, we went through SRF funding. We went through Kimberly Horn, which I know you guys have used to basically do all the engineering. So they were the engineer design. They submitted all the paperwork upstate through DEP up in Tallahassee. The process came back. Then, we started to build it. We had to take the old part apart. But again, utilities is always going to be a process in the making. It's never going to be you're going to say, okay, we've got this and we're done. So you're always going to have something going off because you got to deal with the stormwater runoff. Right now they're talking about you have to have start looking at alternative water sources. You have 7 wells that you deal with right now. You've got, I think it's 38 lift stations, and and then I think you've got 3 storage tanks. And I know that like I said, the $22 million you've got is just the assessment. I know, Mary, you had talked about doing another water treatment facility out on a facility, and if that's how that moves forward, that'll probably gobble that $22 million up like it's nothing. A lot of it is just, I know I've heard a resident here, I've heard them talk about, water boil notices, which seems to be an issue with residents. A lot of that is going out, and like I said, your 2-inch lines, you want to change all those out first, and then you want to have transfer or shut-off valves, so that way if you have a break, you can limit the flow of that water into certain areas to keep that from going in and making a larger impact on water boil notices. You guys just hired a gentleman, Tommy King, from Fort Meade, who's been doing it for a long time, so that was a good hire. Kudos for the city. I think he's going to do a bang-up job for this city. He understands what's ahead of him. But like I said, the other thing we also did is your sludge and stuff, you have to take that and it has to be transported out of the thing, and you're paying for that on a fee. We came out, we looked at going and doing a BCI system where we could take our sludge and turn it into a viable fertilizer and sell it instead of paying for it. That was a long, drawn-out process. The other thing is setting up an operations center. We had SCADA that basically will tell us and alert us if there's a pipe break, a line break, or anything like that, but it operates 24 hours a day. And that was a system that, we had to build an operations system. We do some of the sample testing there on some of the water and stuff like that, but water is going to continue to get expensive because as long as you treat it, right now we have a governor that water is his primary. When he comes in, I don't know that water will be the issue, so we'll have to figure out how to pay for it. I know when Rick Scott was in office, his was affordable housing, and then of course he swept the Swiderski Trust Fund, which took all that out, but a lot of it's just is utilities was just redoing that water treatment facility was very time consuming.
What level of knowledge and understanding do you have of municipal planning processes as it pertains to infrastructure? And give an example of an infrastructure planning process that you assisted with.
Well, when you talk about infrastructure, there's all different kind of aspects, because when you talk about growth, I mean, I came from, Davenport, we went from 4,400 to over 20,000. I think when you look at infrastructure, a lot of times people look at their utilities. Like I said, when I came in, the city manager, Kelly, there at the time was like a traditional neighborhood. We were dealing with low water pressures where people were complaining when they got up in the morning they couldn't even take a shower or a bath. So we went out, we had to put it out to bid. That was a process that went through. Then we had to rate the individuals. Then we had to go through the funding source. Then we went through the neighborhoods. We knocked on doors. Basically, we told everybody, look, we want you to be patient with us because there's going to be days that when you come out your driveway, it's going to be a mess out there. It's going to look like somebody dropped bombs or something like that. It's just going to be a mess. So please be patient with us. At the end of the day, you're going to enjoy the reward. So we went from 2-inch lines, old lines. Some of them were they were really old lines. We went ahead and put the 8 inches in. So that way we weren't going to have any issues as we progress and go down. But I think it was probably the infrastructure project on that. A lot of the homes that come in the neighborhood, they basically install and put their own infrastructure in, especially if it's HOAs. They basically just tap into where our lines are outside. They'll put in a lift station, and we want them to turn that lift station over to us once it's built out, so we can control it if there's ever any issues.
If there was a special event that involved FDOT road closures, what would need to be brought before council in order to have it approved? And if approved, what happens as far as the city is concerned on the day of the event?
Well, if it's a DOT road, every city has what they call a road closure form that has to come in front of the council. The council has to approve it so they're aware of it. I think that, and you guys, I don't know if you have something, but you probably have got something on your website that somebody can just download. It's probably a form that they just fill out, and then again, it gets set on the agenda and it gets set aside. There's probably fees and stuff like that. A lot of times it's the same people that come in every year to do the same special events. Then you got to get with the sheriff's department who you contract with. I think that you want to make sure that depending on the movement, you're going to have staff probably from streets set up some cones and do some roadblocks and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that you've got proper signage. Once the council's approved that people know that those roads are going to be closed, so they don't try to go through it and say, well, nobody told me. Because people don't like to be inconvenienced. So you've got Facebook, you've got social media, you've got probably flashing signs that you can use and stuff like that. But a lot of that has to be approved once it's set up through like your staff. And then if you got to have patrol out there, if there's an event where there's actually moving, you guys do a parade here and you shut down Main Street. But DOT's a little bit different. So a lot of times you have to make the county aware as well. But once the council approves it, then you just go through the process.
Describe any experiences you may have had in developing and recommending policies to council relating to growth, such as annexation, expansion of utilities, or subdivision standards.
Well, a lot of that had to do with like I said, we had a lot of growth. So a lot of the policies when I came in were so old, we did a lot of policy changes. It seemed like we were writing up a lot of policies, handbooks. We had stuff with our workman's comp. When it come to growth, again, we had a land development regulation. It was so annotated. There was even terms in there, I think, that even talked about horse and buggy. We had to really take a look at our land development regulations to bring them up to some of the stuff that was in the Florida Building Code, because the Florida Building Code seems to change a lot faster than anything else. A lot of it had to do with streets. We had to figure out, what streets are ours and what streets aren't ours. So we had our streets department go out and take an inventory. What potholes we had, what potholes we didn't have. We had streets that were doing, what they call in the terminology is what they call bird bathing or ponding. So we had to address some of those issues when it came to that. But a lot of it was just redoing our codes. With the housing growth that we had coming in, we call them rooftops. We had to basically make sure that we were following what a lot of the building codes had stated it was in with our land development regulations. And then again, we had our zoning districts, which were either, they're all different through different cities. Ours were residential 1, residential 2, commercial high, commercial low. So we just had to basically make sure that all those zoning districts were properly set up. You've got some things right now going upstate that they're looking at. There's a 3-level right now in buildings, but they're talking about going to 6 to 10 in some cities and stuff like that. So those are adjustments that are going to have to be made as well too. And brought back, of course, it has to come for the commission for approval.
What technology or digital tools do you believe are essential for a modern city clerk's office to improve transparency, such as digitized archives, streaming meeting videos, or online public request portals? And what resources would you, as a city manager, commit to this function?
Well, I think your city clerk, most of them work under the council here. It's under the city manager. I mean, they go to their conference every year, the Florida Association of City Clerks Association. I think they're probably more in tune on what goes on. Some of the cities, what they've done is they basically have put stuff online. If somebody wants to do a 119 public records request, they can just go online, fill it out. You can't ask who it is, why they want it, or anything like that. And then it's up to the council's policy, if you have it in your charter, depending on the size of it and how much time frame it's going to take, if you want to charge a fee. One of the things that we've looked at and we're looking at, I think they're still looking at it in Davenport, is some of your agenda items can get pretty lengthy. And if you have one person that's doing the clerk work, I mean, it can be very consuming. In Winter Haven, when I was sitting up on the diocese, I'd go home and I would get, my back of my chairs in my office, I'd have paperworks and binders. It was just, tons of paper. And one of the things that we did, virtue of statute with the city attorney, is basically the only thing the clerk really needs to record on the agenda with the minutes is an action item, if it was a vote yes or no and how it was voted. Some of the commissions still wanted the verbatim minutes, so you get things in there like if they went to a function and ate something, it would be in the minutes. So those are the things that we talked about. They've also got software out there now. It's agenda software, which I think is something that all cities should look at, because what it does is it allows everybody that's involved in the agenda, all your directors can go into that software, and if they have an agenda item, they can go in and put that agenda item on that software. And it allows the clerk to take a closer look at that, and it makes it easier to get it to the council. So I would 100% support anything that's going to make that person's job easier, because like I said, the more you grow, the more public records you're going to get, and they can be very consuming for that person.
As the central point for public records requests, the city clerk's office relies on timely cooperation from all departments to retrieve documents. What are your expectations for internal collaboration and accountability among staff, the keepers of the record, to facilitate the clerk's fulfillment of these requests, especially when balancing transparency with the legal protection of sensitive data?
Well, it's it's expected. It's not a matter of should it be done. It's a matter of it's going to be done. But in all fairness to staff, you have a policy that they understand how this functions and operates. It's as simple as a cell phone. If you have staff that have cell phones, they have to understand they can't delete messages, they can't delete things. So do you have a policy that they understand? You can't scream at somebody and say, well, you didn't do this if they don't know. One of the things that, when you talked about policies in the past, that was one of the things that we did. We set up a policy for speaking to the media. We had a policy for Facebook. We had a policy for, there was a lot of things that we changed and stuff like that we worked with our human resource department. But I think that they have to have an understanding that, if you reach out and you talk to somebody, or there's anything that's related to work on that city phone or anything on that email, that has to be saved, and you have to make sure that that's secured, because if somebody asks for that, you have to provide that information. But that's something, it's not a matter of a gray area, can it be? It has to be because of statute. 119 is pretty clear on that.
How do you approach succession planning to ensure the continuity of essential municipal services when key staff members retire or leave? Provide an example of a policy or program you implemented to address this.
Well, I think the mayor spoke about it at the commission meeting I was at when he was talking about Jason being here and not having a second person in command. I think as a leader, as a city manager, if you don't do succession planning, I think you're a failure. I think because right now you've got people, when you get in there and you take your first 30 days and you look at your staff, I mean, you may have a person that's second in charge, but do they have the professional development to come in and fulfill and step into that HR department? Do they have that position that they can come in? Have they gone through all the GOFA training, the GOFA training? Do they understand GASB if they're going to step in and become the finance person? So I think professional development is huge. I think having succession planning is huge, because it's not a matter of just taking a week and the city manager going somewhere for a thing, but you have to always think long-term. I mean, we all want to be here as long as we can be, but I think to make the city to where it's something where it can continue to tick and stay on that track, you have to have succession planning, but you have to have the right people in place, give them the proper training to make sure that they can do that job.
Have you reviewed the City of Avon Park's annual budget? And if so, what is your impression of our financial condition?
Yes, I have. I've spent a lot of time on the budget because it's very important. That's basically my marching orders. I've looked at your budget. I see things like you went up about a 20% increase. You're a little bit over $70 million total. You increased your millage at 6.000, which is like a 34.1% increase. Your sanitation rate went from 22 to 28. Your general fund's about 16,999. Your infrastructure fund's about 8.4. Your CRA is sitting at 3.0. Your water and sewers at 39 mil with about 29 in CIP. But like I said, a lot of that will probably be covered with your 22 million. Your airport fund, I think, is something that should be looked at. I think that's a little bit low. I know that you talked about putting somebody in there. I think when you get into the grant writing, I see I'm running out of time, but I think when you get in the grant writing, there's a lot of stuff that you can go after with FAA and some stuff you can get in DOT, but you have to have somebody that's at the state level, like Mr. Franklin, come in and write that letter to approve that, to get that to move forward.
All right. And that is time. We would like to afford you a 2 to 5 minute opportunity to make a closing statement for everyone.
Sure. I'm here, like I said, you guys started out with a lot of people that came in here and said they wanted to do this job. I mean, the pay is what the pay is. I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years. I'm passionate what I do. You have to look at the person. You guys have a tough decision. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not. But Stephen Honeycutt's one of these type of people I'm committed. I'm committed to the 5 of you up here because I understand you're my bosses. But I also am committed to the communities that I work in. I'm committed to the people that I come in and work every day. I have an open door policy. And I don't want people just to come to work and feel like it's a job. I want them to come to work, and when they leave after they're done with their day, I want them to come and give me an honest 8 hours of work, go home, be with their family, whatever, but I want them the joy to come to work. I'm passionate about what you guys have here. I mean, like I said, my phone rings all the time about, hey, can you come here, let's go. And the money's been a lot, but what I see here in Avon Park is what you guys have here is something that a lot of cities don't have. I mean, you guys have a downtown core with the right people can be something, amazing. You have lakes, you have assets here that I think that are just unbelievable. I think that there's things here that can basically turn this city. I mean, you call it the city of charm. Let's make it the city of charm. Everybody should come in here. Let's smile. Let's see people enjoy what they're doing. It's legislation is going to continue to beat the cities up. I think that you have to understand how city operates in a whole. Statute 166 pretty much tells how cities are supposed to operate, and they talk about home rule. But we all know that the legislators upstate are constantly going to attack that. I mean, we've had issues with sovereign immunity that can bankrupt some small cities. We've got cities down south where the county's trying to fold them up and take them down in Holmes Beach and areas like that. I mean, I have fought for years. The job that you do, I mean, I've always been involved in everything that I can be involved when it comes to not just putting things in one toolbox, but being able to understand what you're doing. I know that Denise reached out to me when I spoke at an event for PIDGET, which is your workman's comp. We set up our workman's comp. We did a safety program here, which she has now initiated, basically because it has cut our workman's comp rating down. It's constantly looking at new ways to save the taxpayer money, but also make what you're doing more efficient. I don't think, and I know that whoever you hire, if it's me, and I hope to God it's me, you're going to go and do my references. I mean, I can give a million references, but the problem is, like I said, I hate that we only had 45 minutes. I wish that you guys would have had more time, because I know when we did it in Winter Haven, we had one-on-ones. You know, so you got to actually know the individual. Because, I mean, other than what you see on paper, what I say, you really don't know Stephen Honeycutt. But again, you're not going to get anybody that's going to show up. I mean, my workday starts at 7 o'clock a.m. The reason why it starts at 7 o'clock a.m., I want to come in and have that hour time to look at what I have to do that day. So when my staff walks in the door, I'm ready for them. Because I want them to be able to, I have an open door policy. I want them to walk in, be able to sit down and talk with me with issues. And then if one of you call. And the other thing is, I have to make sure, like you just had that fire, I have to make sure that my staff understand if there's something that goes on in the city, I want to know. I don't care what time of the day it is, because I have to make sure each and every one of you know what's going on. Because the last thing I want is council member Michelle to get a phone call and you have no idea what they're talking about, or mayor. I mean, so that to me, that's important. Communications is huge. But I'm very passionate about what I'm doing, and I can tell you, you're not going to get anybody any better. I can assure you that, and like I said, you won't be sorry. But again, you guys have a tough decision ahead of you, and I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Mr. Honeycutt, thank you very much.
Can I just ask one follow-up question, just since you're the only one that currently does not live in Highlands County?
I'm 28 miles away. It takes me 31 minutes, and if I'm here at 7 o'clock, like I said, it takes me 31 minutes to get here. Once I come over 60, I'm 11 minutes out.
So is that within the mile radius? Do you remember?
It
off the
says
top of your head?
25 miles, but that's
Yeah, I think
something that
it's
can be
25,
adjusted and
yeah.
related into the contract of the person. That would be up to you all to change or decide.
Okay, so just to be clear, you still are planning to reside in Winter Haven?
If
And make the commute.
if that 3 miles is going to make a difference, then yes, I would have to address that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have a question also too. Would you be willing to do weekly reports at the end of the week? Is that something that
Weekly
you-
reports for the council?
Yes.
If that is something that the council decides that they would want, yes, I know that your previous city manager was doing that. What we've done in other cities, I think that you can get annotated with information. What we would do is we would turn into basically monthly reports at the end of the month. I would give you a breakdown of what everything that was going on in code enforcement, how many cases they had, how much went in front. If you guys want updates on the budget, all that stuff, we would give a monthly reports. If we had projects that was going on, I would give you a progress report on where that project was and where it was going. But if the council says they want a weekly report, I'm in a week's time, I mean, you know, how much is going to change. But again, if that's what the council wants, and that's what the council will get.
Very good. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much.
I have one, Mayor.
Oh.
Mr. Honeycutt, I want to go to, if it's okay, to these 13, can I take him back to question 13? Can I do that?
No, we're not gonna.
I'm sorry?
Well, so one suggestion that Ms. Coger had is that every single candidate missed questions. We didn't get through all of them. So any of the questions they didn't have time to answer, she could email them and they can have time to respond to that and send it back to us. That way we'll definitely have all the responses before our next meeting.
No, this is a follow-up on one of his questions. Wasn't the 2 questions they asked, they were,
Okay.
yeah.
You're following up the question you already answered.
Yeah, I'm following up to
Okay.
a question that he already answered.
Got it.
And I noticed that none of the candidates gave this answer, and I wanted to know if this was important. The question is, explain the negative aspects of outsourcing the city building and permit services. And would one of them be, lack of revenue?
Well, when you say the question was, what is the negativity? Again, it's an enterprise fund first and foremost. I mean, you're going to have some startup cost, because you're going to have to hire people. Building officials aren't cheap. I mean, you know, to get a good, decent building official that's actually certified, you're probably talking $100,000 plus. I do believe that having a planner, you can probably find a planner at a level 2. That I think a planner is important. Again, I think that a $70 million budget, I think there's trade-offs. Again, I think right now, you don't have the growth that's coming at you. I think you've had about a 20% growth on residential. I think that's going to change, and at some point, I think that's something that the council needs to address. But I think most of your building departments, if they're run properly, they should be able to be self-sustaining, you know, just like your utilities, because they're ones, when that money comes in, it stays in that department, and it only can be spent within that department. There's a certain amount that can come out that can be used for, like, HR's involved and helps them out. So there's some that you can kind of pull some money out of there for some interdepartment, what they call intertransfers. but most of it has to stay there and has to be used, and you have to use it within a certain amount of time frame. Otherwise, the state, when they go and you do your state audits, they're gonna ask questions. There's cities right now, they're in issues, that's got big money in the building department and are spending it improperly, so you have to be very careful. But I think as you grow, me personally, the thing is, when people come to a city, they come to a city because they wanna live here. They come in here, they want to deal with the city. I mean, like I said, there's nothing wrong with what the counties do, but sometimes the counties are 3 times the size of the city. So I don't know how long they're turning over permits. So the biggest thing is when you're a builder, a home builder, they want to get that property in the ground, they want to get those footers up, get those 4 walls up, that roof on the top, and they want to get that thing CO'd so they can pay off whatever money they got. Me personally, I think the cities, when they have the proper people, they work better at it. A lot of places now, what they're doing is they're using outside sources to have come in and do building inspections because cities couldn't keep up with the demands. But again, that is at the pleasure of you 5.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You all have a good week and enjoy the rest of your weekend, and thank you for your time.
You as well.
So instead of emailing the questions that didn't get answered to the applicant, can we call them specifically? I mean, what's the difference in them meeting out with us and saying, hey, I'm planning on putting my resume in, this is what I stand for?
Just trying to get the answer to all the council members.
Okay. Okay.
Well, the only problem I have, counsel, with the emailing, go online and Google and get all the answers you want. So why would we allow them to do that? For the ones that they didn't answer.
Why not?
Just because you gave us the answer don't mean you knew. You just went and Googled and got the answer.
Certainly one way to look at it.
Well, I guess a lot of the question, I mean, one thing that would help with that is a lot of the questions ask them to provide specific examples. So if they're not able to give us a specific example of, you know, how they've experienced or what they've done with it or whatever, then we would kind of know, hey, that's more of a cookie cutter Google answer versus I've actually experienced kind of answer.
Well, 2 of them only had 2 questions anyway that they didn't answer, so.
Yeah.
Not that they wasn't important questions, but there's only 2 of them.
Okay. So we want to go ahead and forward the questions they didn't answer to the candidates or not? Got one says no. Any other opinions?
I'd rather not. If I have any questions, I think I'm just gonna call them.
Anyone else? Okay. Anything else, Coker? All right. With that, we will,
So what happens as of here, Mayor?
there was no action taken.
No, I mean, so we just gonna give this to her on Monday,
We're-
And then-
Monday by 9, yep.
and then we gonna address it on Monday?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Would you be able to have this video up for us to review over the weekend? Okay. Okay.
Anything else for the good of the city?
Yeah, are we selecting on Monday?
It's up to the council at the time.
So we're gonna discuss it?
Well, obviously, yeah, there's already a line item on the agenda.
Okay.
Anything else for the good of the city? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, please.
Seeing no opposition, we are adjourned.
Thank you.